Tom Quee and Sam Wiles present Down in the Hole, a Tom Waits podcast which explores and critiques, episode by episode, every album of the American artist. To find out more information about the show and the man himself, visit TomWaitsPodcast.wordpress.com. Hey everyone, hello and welcome back once again to Down in the Hole. We are, you should know by now, but we are a Tom Waits podcast. We are exploring every single release of Tom Waits, all his studio albums. We're going to go on to bonus tracks. We're going to do, we've done live albums, we've done extra episodes. We're just obsessed with Waits, really, in the same way that Lewis Carroll was obsessed with Alice. In a slightly less perverse way, we like to think, though. It's slightly,
spoiler alert.
Yeah, we're a little, enamoured. But of course, it's not just me here. I have my my very own white rabbit with me, Sam. Sam, what's up?
Well, we can't be late. We have to keep this brief. But yeah,
we do.
This is Alice, man. This is one that I don't think either of us would ever think would, again, kind of like the Black Rider. This is quite a popular one. People are quite looking forward to hearing what we have to say about Alice. I don't know about you, but this was kind of relegated to quite an obscure release, at least in my early sort of Waitsian career. But I don't know, is this either like a real undiscovered gem, or is this just the contrarian hipster's favourite Tom Waits album? I guess we'll get into that later.
Yeah, I think Tom as a whole is sort of the contrarian hipster mode, isn't he? But I have to say that before we delve into it too deeply, I did know the album fairly well. It wasn't like you say, it wasn't one that I could sort of name every track when I was getting into Waits. But revisiting it for this pod, I have to say that it's leapt straight into my top three. I think the album is a genuine one of Tom's genuine masterpieces. So I think it's outstandingly good.
Yeah, to people who might not have listened to every episode, Tom's got a bit of a unique top three, because one of your top three is actually Nighthawks at the Diner, isn't it?
Nighthawks can never leave my top three.
Wow.
That's just a personal rule. It blows me away on so many levels. I think they literally captured magic on tape. And it just brings a great smile to my face. I think in terms of the linguistic virtuosity, it's mind-blowing. The band are insane. Mike Melvoin, come on, Mike Melvoin.
And then then you're going to have Mule Variations as kind of a no shit Sherlock standard.
Yeah.
So that means you're pushing Rain Dogs out of the top three. I mean,
and Bone,
Nick Foles and Michael Ornstein. I'm not going to be happy with this, man. You're going to be upsetting a lot of our fans.
We are.
People on Twitter, take to the skies, please. Let us know if Alice is in the top three, because people on like Metacritic and stuff do cite this as probably one of his like critically most acclaimed albums, really, isn't it?
It's his highest acclaimed album on Metacritic. It was. It came. Anyone that's not aware of Metacritic, it's effectively kind of like a Rotten Tomatoes of every review. So it kind of gives you the definitive kind of like critical score of something. And it came second in 2002, just underneath an album from our hometown, actually, The Street's incredible original Pirate Material. And third was Queen to the Stone Age, Songs for the Deaf. So the company that it's nestled in is unbelievable. Yeah. But yeah, it came second. And I think Blood Money, obviously, which was released the same year, kind of the double release, and we're going to get onto that in the next episode. But that was like 20th. So it was kind of, Alice is very much regarded, I think, by a lot of people as the kind of, if it was like a poor Edward, like Alice is kind of the normal head, you know what I mean? The more approachable human-like head, in a sense. But anyway, we'll get on. So just before we get into the emails, as ever, I just want to say, please, feel free to email us yourself, TomWaitsPodcast@gmail.com. You can also tweet us at TomWaitsPodcast, all one word. We're always sharing stuff on there. One of the things that we shared recently, I just want to give a shout out to Jared Carney as well. He was a guy that was good enough to email us. If you listen back to previous shows, you can hear the email. But basically, he runs a little blog where he interviews people that he's interested in or enjoys their work, and he asked me and Sam, which was a great privilege, really. And I've tweeted that link regularly, and it's also on the blog. It's a blog post itself, so if you want to, you can sort of just put, Down in the Hole podcast interview in Google, and you should be able to find it on Jared's blog anyway. But yeah, if you want to find that, it's TomWaitsPodcast.wordpress.com on the blog as well. And yeah, also finally, we're on YouTube as well, host the episodes on YouTube, and there's extra episodes, and we need to do that, Sam. We have a VH1 Storytellers bonus episode coming. It's been a little delayed, but it's coming. So we'll jump in first with our first email of the day. This is from Michael Davis. He starts with "Hello, Sam and Tom," and he gives us a recording. Basically, we mentioned in the previous episode during the Mule Variations tour that Tom had worn like a tinfoil hat during Eyeball Kid, and kind of like shot light into people's faces during the more instrumental breaks. And he sent us a YouTube link, so you can find that if you just search. I believe it's in Paris. So if you search Eyeball Kid Mule Variations Live, he takes a little umbrage with me because as I imagine some people would in the emails, because I slagged off a song that people love. I slagged off Hold On from Mule Variations. I stand by my convictions. It's quite a boring track, but he goes on to say, I've got to say that I disagree with your distaste for Hold On. I've always felt that it was somehow more of a Waits song for women among the myriad of traditionally hyper-masculine Waits tracks. Every woman I've ever played Hold On for has adored it, but you've got a better chance of winning the lottery or being struck by lightning than of finding a woman who'll make it more than 25 seconds into a song like Metropolitan Glide or the more recent John the Revelator, which is very true. Mike Rowland also says that he's been enjoying the podcast quite a bit. It's the only one that he has time to follow, or he makes time to follow, so thank you so much for that. He also says that assuming you have willing enough participants, do you ever think you would be willing to do a bonus episode in which you talk to a few guests? I think me and Sam are very open to that, really. I think that would be a lot of fun, and if that's something, maybe at the end, maybe post Bad As Me, we would get onto that in some sort of bonus feature. But yeah, if you are interested in that, or if you want to just get in contact anyway, TomWaitsPodcast@gmail.com. That's great. Thank you so much, Roland. Move on. We got a great email from Eric as well. We mentioned on the Mule Variations episode that we were kind of discussing what Marvel DC character Tom could play, and he basically proposes the Joker, especially the Killing Joke Joker, because he does have Tom Waits' hair. Like the classic Alan Moore story. But yeah, if you look back,
it would
on
be
that
more
kind of
Heart Attack and Vine Tom. That kind of era, definitely.
But no, that was a great recommendation as well, Eric. Jeff is someone who's been in contact with us quite a bit, actually, and Jeff got back in contact with us, and he just wanted to say, hi, Tom and Sam. I just wanted to drop you guys a quick note to say I enjoyed listening to the Mule Variations episode over the weekend. I thought you really did it justice. And he says, cheers for reading out the previous email and your kind words about it. Of course. He says, also, it was interesting to learn that Filipino Box Spring Hog was originally written for Bone Machine. I never knew that. Perhaps give me some small validation on my idea that the song, along with Black Market, Baby, and Eyeball Kid, would work better outside of Mule. Although I must admit, listening to the album in full for the first time in a couple of years in the lead up to your episode, I had a bit more love for Eyeball Kid than perhaps I did before. I agree, actually. In my sort of infantile ears, when those nascent listenings, when you first get into it, it's like, oh, this is a bit weird. You know what I mean? It's like this has put me out my comfort zone a bit.
Well,
but, yeah.
it's weird that he should bring that up though, because obviously we're going to get into the fact that as we said about Filipino Box Spring Hog being recorded for in earlier sessions, we're going to see that the Eyeball Kid will actually make a small cameo appearances throughout the Alice demo tapes. Obviously, we'll get onto that later, but it's clear that like whenever Tom gets an image that he just thinks is so cool, he will not let it go, and he will get it onto an album eventually. And I always like that.
Our final email is from a good friend of the show, actually, Nick Foles, who, if you follow us on, if you follow us on Twitter @TomWaitsPodcast, Nick has sent in a few kind of drawings of just his interpretations of Tom Waits songs. He did like a Poor Edward one, he did a Jockey Full of Bourbon one. Hopefully he'll do some more because he's brilliant artist and brilliant stuff. And one of the things we like to ask, if you want to get in contact with the show and you're like, what do I don't just want to praise it blindly, and we understand that, and you don't want to just have a go at me for Hold On. You can also just let us know your Tom Waits story. Let us know how you got into Tom Waits, because we've read out loads and loads of stories, and they're always interesting. People always have kind of like weird and wonderful kind of journeys down the rabbit hole, as it were, into Waits. And Nick is no different, really. Nick starts with, "Hey guys, I love the podcast. Thanks for the shout out about the drawings. Really appreciate it. I thought I'd share my Tom Waits discovery story. I was a heavy metal kid. Being the youngest in the family really means that you emulate your older siblings who are all into metal and heavier rock and roll. Don't get me wrong, I still listen to some old-fashioned rock, but once I ventured out of the pre-built comfort zone, I was much happier. In high school, I had my own car and a job to afford to buy my own music. I gravitated towards blues and jazz, much to the bewilderment of my older brothers. I vividly remember the day I stumbled upon Waits. My brother and his friends were running out to go pick up some CDs at a local music store, and I tagged along. The friend picked up a random assortment of heavy metal albums. Amid the stack, standing out like a sore thumb, was a strange black and white cardboard covered case. "What's that?" I asked. "Heard this guy on Letterman last night," he said. "You have to hear this dude's voice." We hopped back into the car and he popped the CD in, skipped a bunch of tracks and hit play. I heard a rooster crow, what sounded like a rocking chair creaking, and someone muttering the words, "I love it." A weather vane of a harmonica creaked to life, a guitar twanged, and an acoustic bass thumped. Suddenly, a voice filled with honey and fawns, beautiful, honey and fawns. A voice filled with honey and fawns sang in no uncertain term that I don't go to church on Sunday. And I was devastated in the best way possible. My brother and his friend got a laugh or two out of the chorus, but I was hooked. After the song was over, my brother's friend ejected it and put in something else. "Can I buy that from you?" I squeaked her from the back seat. He thought about it for a second, and then decided he would part with it, and I forked out a handful of bills. What a fool! What a fool! I spent the rest of the day in my room with headphones clasped to my ears. I must have listened to it 8 times front to back as I stared out the window at a blistering summer day turn into a sweltering hot night. I remember Mule Variations confusing me as a title. Was it an album of re-recorded existing tunes? Was it B-sides from a previous album named Mule? I spent the rest of the summer buying the rest of Tom's catalogue, usually 3 albums at a time. I purchased them in no particular order, and I remember being somewhat concerned that I bought the wrong artist when I got Nighthawks and Bow Machine in the same go-round. Which is brilliant.
I know that feeling.
Yeah, it bewildered me, but I like that it bewildered me. There was no way that this one man had so much music in him. I mean, that is a common theme of our discussions on this podcast, really, just the wide range of this guy's creativity. Anyway, Nick continues, says, years later, after a lucky round of tips at the bar I worked at and spending all night refreshing a ticketing website, I got a ticket to see Tom in Chicago for the Orphans tour. Funny tour name, seeing that the album Orphans hadn't been released or announced yet. I drove 10 hours by myself to do it and would do it again, no questions. I won't linger on the details of the show, but afterwards I walked to a bar and got a beer with the crowd who would stumble from the auditorium. We all awkwardly broke ice and were best friends in minutes. Having Tom's music in common is like finding out that you had the same babysitter when you were young, or that you were both patrons of a long-closed restaurant. You instantly share something intimate and personal, something not often seen in others, and exciting when you see it reflected. I imagine that this must be how the endangered creatures must feel when it comes across one of its own. We talked about the show with the sparkling excitement that fills you in those hours after a concert when you try to cement those memories in your mind before you lose him. Smoking outside the bar, I've since quit, while talking to a circle of people, one man came up to me and asked if I had a light. I said yeah, and he said, good, don't use these then, and tossed me a matchbook that had Tom on the front and had the tour date and name on it. Oh. I thanked him and asked his name. He said just to call him Matchbook Man. It was
Oh my god.
I know. Well, Nick actually says, he goes, it was as Waitsy of a scene as I could have possibly imagined being part of.
That's so good.
I exchanged emails with some of the people that I met, and one even went so far as to find a bootleg of the show that we'd all just seen. Anyways, he concludes, love the podcast. Can't wait to hear your take on Real Gone. Made my favourite depending on the day, phase of the moon, or shoe I'm currently wearing. Thanks, Nick. Thank you, Nick. That was a brilliant email.
Brilliant. I love that.
And yeah, long live the Matchbook Man.
The Matchbook Man, yeah. Because like that is a Tom Waits song title as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh god, yeah. So we'll jump into Alice, and it's worth saying at this time that Tom is really established as who he is now, almost like he's gone past that kind of like not necessarily that he's grown out of the Franks phase, but he's kind of he's in that sororal mode, and that's how he is now, really. Although arguably Bad as Me sees an lesion between the two in a brilliant way, but around 2001, Waits was staying busy, obviously. Alice and Blood Money had been written 10 years before for Robert Wilson, which we'll get onto, but they were sort of recorded around this time anyway. And he actually starred in something called Freedom Highway, which was an Irish documentary in 2001. So this is just after Mule Variations, just before Alice, which was all about politics and art. So it wasn't really about him. He was just kind of in it, and it was directed by Philip King. And King would recall in 2004 to the Irish Times that, quote, Tom Waits walked into the room with the barn door and he threw it onto the ground and he threw a chair on it and he sat up on it and the door creaked and the chair creaked and he threw that tambourine into the door and he put his foot on it and a banjo in his hand and he said, I'm ready. I knew he was ready. But I wasn't ready, because his voice was like a whirlwind that just blew me across the room when he started to sing. He was consumed by the act of doing what he was doing. It's all those times that you feel the 5-year wait is worth it, the 117 phone calls were worth it, the cajoling, the knocking on the door, the inevitable rejection, which is a constant part of this work, is worth it. So Tom remains, as enigmatic as ever, the Cheshire Cat in the tree, as you will, and still really compelling figure. And obviously me and Sam are young enough just to remember the horrific moments of 9/11. Mm-hmm. And this is kind of the not that you could make no claim for Alice in any way being influenced by 9/11, obviously, because the songs not only were written 10 years prior, but that isn't really Tom's style, although he does kind of touch on the war later in his albums, doesn't he? But I mean we'll get on to that. But yeah, he was interviewed by Edna Gunderson in USA Today in an article entitled I Hope More People Understand Me, and alongside various Alice questions that we'll get onto, she asks him, since you brought it up, how did September 11th impact artists and music? And he said, quote, artists are trying to figure out what they do that has value. A lot of things have to happen before you turn on your record player. You want to be safe and warm and held. At times I think, what am I doing? Making jewellery for the ears? The world's on fire and we're on a bus without a driver. We're all very much awake now. It's important for us to remain awake and not go back to sleepwalking in our pyjamas, playing golf and contemplating our navels. The rest of the world is tapping us on the shoulder with the oldest conflict of time, the haves and have-nots. It's time for great men to step forward with wisdom and depth and compassion, and I don't know who they are. We all feel impotent politically. I don't know the answer. You have to start with self, family and community.
Well, maybe Tom himself is one of those guys who would be great to lead us, but obviously, as they say, those who would be, those who are kind are just not born to lead, are they? But yeah, it's rather fitting that you should start off with a quote about that, because this is not going to be a very pleasant album to get into really at all. This is probably the darkest out of all of his works, really.
Yes, I would agree. Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously this was it about 92, 93? All of this was done.
92. So effectively, after the huge success of the Black Rider, Robert Wilson and Paul Schmidt teamed up again for Alice, and Waits got involved as well. Again, it's not sort of even less so than Black Rider. On Black Rider, you have Waits working with Burroughs explicitly with the story, and then he's going out and they're crafting it and they're thinking up ideas. This, it was very much so that you had the first tryouts of the play in March 1992, where Paul Schmidt basically adapts the two texts of Alice, so Wonderland and Looking Glass. And during the second tryouts, that's November and December, so 6 months later, Waits and Brennan songs were added. They were kind of put on top. They were garnished. They don't inform the narrative. I mean, there's quite a few songs and they still get onto. I think explicitly, Tabletop Joe, for example, which literally doesn't make sense. It has no relation to Alice. Okay, it's about freaks, and Wonderland has freaks to a certain extent, but it feels like something of Black Rider. You know what I mean? It feels like just. And then at other times, Tom is making huge references to Carol and the mythology of that. But yeah, Alice is basically the second in what is known as the Wilson trilogy, and that began with Black Rider and ends with Time Rocker, not Blood Money. That's kind of a separate thing outside of the trilogy. And it premiered late December 1992, 3 hours long, and the songs, as we say, are kind of intersections within the text.
Well, Wilson kind of gave him kind of a lot of freedom just to kind of do whatever he wanted with the music. Like, I think he just said, once you go down the rabbit hole, anyone can say what they want. You can have songs about convenience stores, you're far away from home, which is kind of like being down a rabbit hole in a way. Obviously, Waits had to leave Kathleen again, and Waits, like with the Black Rider, he was a bit reluctant to leave his rather young family for such a long time to go to Hamburg again, but Kathleen kind of just said, no, you are going to work with the genius Wilson again. Course. And another thing that's kind of clear with the songs, I don't want to say rushed or slapdash or anything like that. I don't want to imply that at all. But it's very clear that Schmidt and Waits were kind of working semi-separately, using Wilson as a sort of conduit just to kind of get the story together. And Waits was kind of really, really busy, and he just essentially flicked through the cliff notes of what Schmidt was sending him. And he had over 15 songs, not all of which would actually end up on the final Alice album, or even end up on the illegal demo tapes. And as we go along, it'll obviously, like you mentioned with Tabletop Joe and things like that, the songs that are just Tom Waits songs written for Alice and Alice songs that are written for Tom Waits will become a lot clearer as we go along. And Waits really only had 6 weeks to produce all of the music for Alice in Hamburg. And obviously, and Hamburg itself, Tom Waits is a man who is inseparable from place. He will always write about where he is, most notably on Rain Dogs with New York. But Hamburg itself will worm its way into Alice. And to anyone who would just assume that Tom Waits wrote plays, they'd think, oh, okay, it'd be like Frank's Wild Years, it'd be at the Steppenwolf Theatre or something. No. It is Germanic in its roots, and for me, especially when I first heard this album years ago, I was like, why is there Comedy durch Spate and talking about the Reaper Barn in this English story written by an American? It's really odd.
No, it's interesting. And you're just talking about the disparity between Wilson and Waits, which does lend a certain sense of disjunction, which is very emblematic of Wonderland as a whole. And Robert Wilson was looking back on the play in the notes, and he was talking about the fact that, quote, there are various levels of the narrative. There's the text by Paul Schmidt, which is one thing, and you have the lyrics of Tom Waits, which are another, and they're sort of counterpoints, and sometimes it's like a grid or something that can be lined out so that the visual imagery or this visual story is lined up with Paul's text and Tom's music. And sometimes they're like grids that are going out of phase, and sometimes they line up, but often they're sort of counterpoints to one another. So sometimes you just have to know where when you are listening to the album, don't you have to kind of reorientate yourself. But how exciting! I mean, we'll get onto the sort of wider mythology of Carol and Alice. But obviously, I was saying this to you earlier before we went on the podcast, Sam, and I want to kind of lay down the gauntlet for our listeners. Any of our listeners that are into literature like I am, I can't think of any single work of literature, and I'm going to treat both books as one work. They're quite short. I appreciate that they were released like years apart.
Aren't they mostly compiled though and released just as Alice in Wonderland?
No, they're released as separate books. They're released together, but they're not like merged in the sense of structure. Like, it's very important that they have their very different narratives, but all the figures that exist in the mythos are kind of, in one world. It's all in Wonderland, as it were. But I can't think of any other piece of work that has been so influential on culture.
Right,
like characters.
Well, okay, here we go. I'm gonna list some books now, and people who listen to the podcast, they can probably get in with things to challenge that notion. What about things like Faust? How about 1984, Animal Farm, Lord of the Rings, To Kill a Mockingbird?
1984, mate. Definitely none of the rest. Maybe 1984, but
because if you just look at things that affect pop culture, like I think dystopia is so.
It's not affect though. It's more like crop up and character wise. Like this, can you name any characters from 1984 that are like known in culture? Not really. Whereas Alice is populated with a huge cast of ideas.
Yeah, but does Alice in Wonderland have a TV show hosted by Paul Merton on BBC One?
Not yet. That would be amazing. And Robert was talking as well about the play, and he said that he'd never created a play before with 14 scenes. In Alice, I had 2 acts based on the 2 separate books, as we were saying, with 7 scenes and 7 knee plays each. The first act is set in a room, an interior man-made space with natural objects. The second act is set in a forest, an exterior natural space with man-made objects. The whole play is framed by Charles Dodgson, who is Lewis Carroll, that was his alias, the mathematician, author and photographer who liked to photograph little girls. One of them was Alice Liddell, for whom he invented the story of Alice in Wonderland. Dodgson's alias, the White Rabbit, alias the White Knight, guides Alice through the play. It starts with knee play 1, showing how Dodgson attempts to photograph Alice, and how fleeing from him she falls into Wonderland, which is an interesting inversion there. The middle scene of each act functions as a supportive column, which brings in the autobiographical perspective and has a very colourful set. Scene 4 shows Alice Liddell now grown up, alone, drinking. Scene 11 shows Charles Dodgson alone, sleepless. The finale of each act, which in a sense is scene 7 and 14, are trial scenes in which first Alice, then Dodgson are found guilty of their relationship. So it's marvellous structure. It's not just an interpretation of Alice, it's a complete reinvention of the story. And again, we're speaking for, if anyone's seen the film Dreamland, the brilliant British film from the 80s, all about Alice in Wonderland, where the grown-up Alice is haunted by Wonderland, and all the creatures from Wonderland are from Jim Henson's workshop. Unbelievable. Like if anyone's aware of like the lobster quadrille, you'll know what I'm talking about in Alice. Like just brilliant characters. And Tom himself was asked about Alice. This is an interview with Dan Cohen called, a great title as well, Blood on the Looking Glass. Yes. Which I think I really like the title. So he gets asked, I wanted to ask you about the premise of Alice, and he says, quote, "It's basically a hypothetical romance between Lewis Carroll and Alice, as sick as that might sound for an Oxford professor in his mid-50s to be obsessed with a little girl." And then he's asked if all the songs are centred around that. And he says, yeah, they loosely go around that. They all sprout out of that same root. They're all different ways of saying the same thing. I guess the deal was, when he was writing Alice Adventures in Wonderland and then Through the Looking Glass, photography was reasonably new. And it was just a phenomenon of the chemical reaction to the images in the film. People were seeing photographs for the first time. I think they were mystifying, almost ghostly. To be able to capture emotions or moments between that was a form of magic.
It's weird that you should mention the photography, because the photography in itself was one of the main, I'd say, inspirations for the show. A lot of these photographs a lot of these photographs by Dodgson have recently been cropping up in auctions and stuff, and we've had lots of his letters to Alice. And Paul Schmidt basically said that one of the key visuals would be Dodgson as the photographer, sort of leering in through this lens that would slowly get close to Alice in this really freaky little situation. And in speaking to Theatre Magazine in 1996, Schmidt said, "What I thought would be an interesting approach for the work was the situation that generated in the Alice books, the infatuation of a young cleric at Oxford for his dean's daughter. And by now it's commonplace that Lewis Carroll, people know that he was fixated on little girls, and that photographing them was a constant obsession throughout his life. 19th century views on the relationships between grown-ups and children were highly idealised, but even so, Dodgson's relationship with Alice provoked his eventual split with the family. When Alice was 11, Mrs. Liddell, or is it Liddell, stopped him from coming to see her and made Alice destroy all of Dodgson's letters. There is absolutely no evidence that anything physical ever occurred between Dodgson and Alice, and my Alice in no way suggests that. What I was concerned to make clear was the phenomenon that we easily so describe as child molestation is a complicated matter. Doesn't all affection have an erotic component? And at what point does love and care for a child become harmful? And at what point does a grown-up's affection for a child become an obsession? At what point does obsession become dangerous? What it must have been like to be a child being constantly photographed in an era where the process entailed long periods of holding still, being stared at by the camera's eye. What memories would that engender? Like, it must have been so creepy back in the day just to like have a photograph taken. Like there's that awful joke in that Seth Rogen movie, not Seth Rogen, Seth MacFarlane film, A Million Ways to Die in the West, where they joke about people don't smile in those photographs because they couldn't hold a smile for that long.
Right.
And it is true, you would have to sit there for an hour, 2 hours, just while as Tom said, the chemical reaction must have taken place. Tom in another interview just says it must have been terrifying, as they'd have to like sit in braces and like be like physically just forced to sit in place. And I can't believe that Mrs. Liddell or Liddell would actually indulge this weird fascination that Carol had, really. Like, I mean,
I think crucially, he was a professor of mathematics. He wasn't just a guy down the street. He was in a van, yeah. Her well, in a carriage, but yeah, her father would have been like, I think he was dean of Trinity College. So, but again, yeah, it is incredibly morbid, fascinating thing, and just so great. Like, when I was getting into weights, I always knew Alice in Wonderland. I always thought it was an interesting story. Someone would have told me, oh, Tom kind of wrote a musical about Alice in Wonderland, and it's about the perverse aspects of it. It's not even just a homage to the kind of classic story. I mean, how great. I mean, it's just, and clearly he was invigorated by this material because the album quality is just outstanding, really. So it comes back in 2002 with these albums, and Waits, of course, is long sober here, and he was quite demanding in the sessions. Apparently, he said, "quote I wanted everyone there by 10 a.m. so they were clean. I instructed them they were not allowed to listen to any music in the car on the way up." And of course, similar to Mule, or quite a bit of Mule, there's not a lot, there's a little bit of guitar in here. There's not much guitar on the record.
He started moaning about guitar, didn't he?
Yeah, quote, "The electric guitar thing is overused. They show up in everything. It almost seems like it's the guiding force of popular music. Without it, I wonder what people's music would sound like." So it's just like tying one hand behind your back just for the hell of it. And, he's talking about sort of being with Kathleen, and basically Kathleen saying, let's try and solve some of these problems without guitar. The guitar is so versatile. There's so many times when you hear a guitar that it pulls your focus, and there's a certain normality to it. I like to hear things that are a little more conflicted sometimes. So it's like a little tease or a challenge for yourself. It's like, let me see if you can walk to the corner with a blindfold.
There's a lovely little quote when Waits describes Kathleen as his Alice. And I'm not sure what to make of that, but yeah, this album again, especially in things like Reeperbahn, you can really see her ability to craft a narrative within a song being very, very useful for Tom here. Obviously, a play is a narrative, and these songs, whilst they don't seem to be as connected to the play as even the Black Rider, and the Black Rider songs don't really seem to connect to the play, you can still see how more so in mood and tone and what is trying to be said without words is definitely being conveyed a lot better on this album. But what's weird though is that like you say, he came back after 10 years. Kathleen Brenner had basically been badgering him to just get these songs back on a CD, not on vinyl now. And the weird thing is, we only know what the original play sounded like, as Barney Hopkins rightly points out, is that, well, fortunately for us, whilst Waits was in Hamburg visiting Harry's Harbour's Bazaar of Black Rider fame, he was apparently purchasing a stuffed anaconda, and his briefcase, that has to be made up, but his whole briefcase containing the entirety of all the Alice demos was stolen out of the back of his car. And he did eventually get them all back for what he called a slightly insulting, paltry, sort of fast cash, no hassle sum of $3,000. Yeah, that's it. Like, come on. The demos for a Tom Waits album, you could have got 10, 20 grand for that easily, and he could afford it with his Frito-Lay money.
Totally.
And, you know, luckily for us, being the sort of Waitsian leeches that we are, that don't care for artistic integrity at all, luckily they had been copied and subsequently released on several Dutch albums. And the Alice demos, they are very weird. We talked about the Black Rider demos a month ago, and there are demos for the Frank Wildier's play as well. So clearly Tom seems to get these done in his home first before he brings them into a sort of studio environment to show people like what he's been working on. And yeah, they're very weird. It's very stripped back. It's clear that he's taken a Mellotron home and these sound mixers and stuff. And yep, there is very little guitar on them, and they're even weirder than what we're about to discuss today. Another guy, there's actually just speaking about the musicians as well. Did you notice a certain name that does not appear on this album, kind of oddly?
Rabot.
No, Ralph Carney. This is well, Rabot would quite obviously not be on this album because it's not a guitar-heavy one. But there is brass on almost every track on this album. And there is no Ralph Carney, and Carney, he was kind of insulted by this, and he rang up Tom, and Tom got quite mad that Carney was sort of like assume that he would just be invited back. Waits, obviously, he does like to bring in new blood, and just to give new people a chance, really. And he did have a whole new, like you say, consignment of musicians coming from San Francisco, wasn't it? And
yeah, I guess because it was done with a theatre initially. It's kind of
with a live band, yeah.
Yeah, it never was a studio album in the true sense. So why would he? I mean, although to be fair, even like a lot of the people like Joe Gore, for example, who's been playing guitar with him now since Night on Earth, does play guitar on this as well. So there are those musicians there, and he was asked actually if basically when he came back to record these songs with all the musicians, whether they changed much from the demos. This is for Impress magazine, which is an Australian magazine from 2002. And he says, no, it's all the same stuff, you know. It's like giving away a box of clothes and then you get them back, you know. Hey, those pants, I like those pants. That shirt, I always like that shirt. I never really recorded them, you know. We just did rough demos and then you give the songs to someone else to do. And they either do them in a delightful way or they particularly butcher them and you're not having much say one way about it or another. Except that we were involved in production and you do make suggestions, but essentially I can't do it for them. There's a place where the singer and song kind of become inseparable, so they become orphans for a while and then I get them back. And I was glad to get them back. I'd forgotten that I liked the tunes. My wife had been dripping on me for years. Let's record those. There's some good tunes there, baby. And I said, well, I don't know. So it's a combination of the Chinese water torture and the general enthusiasm and encouragement. And it finally happened. And, you know, oh my God, I'm so happy it happened.
Yeah, Tom actually gave an interview, a similar interview for The Onion. Oddly enough, I was like, oh my God, Tom actually interviewed this kind of joke media organisation, but he kind of is a joke media figure as well, so sure. it kind of is fitting. And he basically was just asked, like, how do you feel it went? You know, do you feel that this music translates from live theatre into studio albums well? And Tom goes, gee, I don't know. What do you think? How did it go? I don't think it really matters much. I mean, by the time it's a record, it's just a record. It either works in that way or it doesn't. I don't think the backstory really dignifies anything or solves any problems that you tried to solve during the recording in the first place. Oh, this is all based on John Wilkes Booth's story, and that third song is when he was trapped in the barn. I mean, I could tell you anything. Helen Keller made an appearance on the last tune, and it's sung by her mother. Oh, okay. Your mind will make sense of anything. You try to create some sort of counterpoint for the story, but you're still dealing with a song logic. When people listen to songs, they're not. It's a form of hypnotism that goes on during the listening process, so you're taking it up through a straw. It's like a separate little world within a world. You go in there and you can pop back out, you know, rather like Wonderland, actually. Those musicals always sound so corny when somebody stops and thinks something is going back to life. And yeah, obviously the demos are very different, and as we've seen from watching live recordings of things like the Black Rider, and there are a couple of clips of later productions of Alice, it is very much all sung in that theatrical way of, I have to make sure the people in the back row can hear what I'm singing. So and there's one really kind of cringy moment when someone tries to do a Tom Waits voice. Yeah, and he's going, everything you can think of, and it's like, oh, please
never go
don't.
Full Waits.
Yeah. Great reference there. No, but yeah, you shouldn't, and I think it's very correct in the sense that he does just give these songs to people. Like, I don't think he even listened to the reviews for Alice. It didn't do as well as the Black Rider did.
No.
For several reasons. Like, maybe it was an overly familiar story. People all know about Alice, and most importantly, as we mentioned, this is a Germanic production. The Black Rider is like, it's their King Arthur essentially. It's really ingrained in their psyche, and in between that, they kind of flock out to see. And I don't see Alice having the same sort of draw, really.
No, probably not. No, I mean, maybe it's more ingrained in our psyche. Sorry.
Just as a quick thing, we don't want to talk about is it Wojciech or Wojciech?
Wojciech.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about Wojciech and Blood Money a lot, but it is just weird to think that in the studio he could be recording God's Away on Business and then working on Fawn later in the afternoon. They were released at the same time, kind of like. Give you some examples. System of a Down's Mesmerize, Hypnotize.
Guns N' Roses, Use Your Illusion. Bruce Springsteen's Lucky Town. Metallica never did it.
No, I thought they did Load and Reload.
They're like years apart.
Oh, are they? Because I could have sworn they were recorded at the same time.
They were recorded at the same time.
But they weren't released together.
Yeah, Reload is kind of like the sort of studio outtakes. And then I think they did kind of an Alice and re-recorded them. But oh my God, Load, Reload. There is a dividing line for Metallica fans, and I won't let on where I stand there. Yeah. But I think what fascinates me most, fundamentally, about the whole Alice production, the whole Alice album, is the history, the true history of Alice that is frightening and weird and enchanting. And I got this brilliant article by Katie Roth from The Guardian. This was written in 2001, and she's basically talking about the uneasiness when you read Alice in Wonderland and kind of knowing what Carol is. And like you say, we are looking at it from a modern gaze, but it weren't that long ago. Like, it weren't like thousands of years ago, 100 years ago. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, it's still a little creepy. I mean, you know, Alice in Wonderland was famously one of Queen Victoria's favourite books. It was of that era. It was very much rule Britannia.
You know, your grandmother's grandmother could have met Lewis Carroll. Like, it's still that close.
That's a long shot. That's a long shot, but yeah, I suppose so. So Katie's writing in The Guardian. She says that, quote, Dodgen's affection for what he calls his child friends was always mingled with a vague yearning. He wrote to one 12-year-old girl, extra thanks and kisses for the lock of hair. I've kissed it several times for want of having you to kiss.
God.
You know, even hair is better than nothing. This is typical of his correspondence. He converted whatever his feelings were into a whimsical, quasi-romantic banter that eventually made its way into the Alice books. He wrote to one mother of a potential visit with her daughter. Would it be de rigueur that there should be a third to dinner? Tete-a-tete is so much the nicest. There was a romantic intensity to the friendship that Dodgson struck up with children, a hint of hunger, of never quite enough. This was especially true of his relationship with Alice. He was not alone in this obsession, though. The era seemed to breed a certain type of neurasthenic man who had a well-developed and intellectually complicated disdain for overt physicality and who found himself drawn to pre-teens. Take John Ruskin. I'm sure many people know John Ruskin's claimed art critic of modern painters, and he was a painter himself and a brilliant writer. He's in Mr. Turner as well, the great Mike Leigh film. Ruskin also fell under the spell of Alice. Among other young girls he encountered, one particular street urchin whom he glimpsed in Italy made a big impression of him. It is one of the paradoxes of Victorian culture that sentimentality, the frilly, sugar-sweet view of the child, often coexisted with darker sexual urges, that they fed each other, and the squeamishness about sex in that era led to a perverse attraction to anything innocent and pure. Children were safe, and in their safety, certain thoughts, dirty, sensual thoughts, were allowed to flourish. And in what is regarded as the book on Lewis Carroll, the biography by Morton N. Cohen, this is from a review of the book. The book generally assumes that Carroll's love of little girls was not just emotional, but sexual, that he was a paedophile, albeit a suppressed one. In the book, Cohen writes, quote, we cannot know to what extent sexual urges lay behind Charles's preference for drawing and photographing children in the nude, which he did a lot of, by the way. He contended that the preference was entirely aesthetic, but given his emotional attachment to children, as well as his aesthetic appreciations of their forms, his assertion that his interest was strictly artistic is naive. He probably felt more than he dared to acknowledge, even to himself. And in The Shadow of the Dream Child, Caroline Leach, basically, I kind of wanted to throw in a bit of counter-argument here, because I feel like we're tarnishing Carroll. She basically writes that Cohen and other biographies had misunderstood the norms and customs of the Victorian era, and that Carroll's adulation of children was not sexual, but a reflection of the romanticisation of the child prevalent in that era. Contrariwise, a website set up by opponents of the traditional Carroll image reports that while Cohen acknowledged the paedophilic nature of Carroll's identity, he, quote, inexplicitly lists the number of intimate woman friends Dodgson had for his life, yet still concludes that existence revolved exclusively around relationships with small girls. So it's it's weird. I mean, you know, what else can you say?
How do you even pick this apart, dude?
Yeah, it's but you know what we have at the end of it is an incredible album.
Just one last thing. It's weird that Waits would go on to say when he's comparing Alice to Blood Money, he basically says this album, I don't know, I guess Alice is more of a metaphysical, maybe more about water, it's more feminine. It's like taking the pill. And yes, this is definitely going to be the most feminine of all his albums, really. And we start off with a feminine name. We start off with the title track, Alice, sung by the White Rabbit in scene 1. Basically, Alice falls down the rabbit hole. Numerous objects fall past her. She sees a mirror with her name written on it, and the mirror breaks, and her name is lost. Obviously, Alice just kind of forgets her name for the entirety of the play, and that's kind of like a moral search for her. What I do like how with this song is we do literally jump straight into the rabbit hole. It just goes straight to "It's dreamy weather," and then the music comes in,
and then the brush drums, and it's just everything's so just tense and just like marbleized. It's gorgeous,
and like. We're 2 seconds into it and we mention dreams. Like immediately we are exploring the possibilities of altered states of mind, dream worlds, and it really is just a big hint of things to come. And again, we're going to talk about opening tracks. It's generally been a mantra since things like Heart Attack and Vine to kick off his albums with a sort of noisy, shaking a stick, grab your attention kind of feel. But Alice really does break that tradition somewhat. Like it sort of beautifully opens the record with this detached whisper. Like his impossible desires have somehow completely numbed him to the extremities of emotions, and like Dodgson sings this openly to an audience on stage, but here on the album it's almost like as if he's just crept up behind you with this barely contained inner confession, and he's expressing it to unexpectant ears rather than to an expectant audience. And like it's paired beautifully with this subtle little piano that you can barely even hear the first time you hear it. It's barely even there in some spots, with those sparse notes just keeping you on a razor's edge. And essentially the song is a red flag for anyone who has just listened to Big in Japan and is expecting this sort of out of control roller coaster or even a runaway steam train of the Black Rider. And this is anything but a typical standard interpretation of the Alice story.
It's incredibly so, and for me it's the obsession with this girl straight away. She keeps being mentioned, he keeps seeing her within his own world. The idea of the skates on the pond, I think one of Waits' one of my all-time favourite Waits images is the end of this song. He talks about I must be insane to go skating on your name. So Carol is aware that this is wrong and what is he doing, but he's just driven by forces that he can't control. And by tracing it twice, I fell through the ice, falling through the ice of someone, going past their surface and down into their depths. It's such an incredible image, and I'm sure Waits and Brennan were aware that falling through the ice of Alice. The word ice is in Alice as well, so there's that compounding nature throughout it, and you also have the idea of tracing it twice throughout the both Wonderland books. The idea of symbolism and words and the power of repetition is all there, but also among this odd kind of predatory identity that he's inhabiting. Oh my god, the delivery of some of these lines, turn the hands back on the clock, like it's so soft, isn't it? And the lyrics are just terrific. There is a sense of like there is no logic here. How does the ocean rock the boat? So how does nature work? What are these forces we're compelled by? How did the razor find my throat?
There are lots of hints of suicide on this album as well, aren't there? He will talk about like there are constant remarks of like death and dying, and like I just love how all he can think of is Alice. There is only Alice. She has a crooked wand. She's put some sort of spell over him. Yep. There are at least 4 allusions to the sea in this song alone, which is probably more than his whole career at this point. And for good reason, as I said in my last article, which you can find on TomWaitsPodcast at WordPress.com, which focuses on the nautical Waits in lyrics and how the ocean is this ultimate symbol of femininity, as we've just said. So, there's things like the Caucasus race and things like that. And it's just, is the symbol of the ocean here? It does convey a sense of Dodgson's powerlessness to Alice. Shall we just refer to him as Dodgson rather than Carol?
Whatever. The weirdo.
Dodgson's sort of powerlessness over Alice. It's he is addressing nature, and there are these forces in nature that are just he is totally powerless against. And like there's some great like abstract little images and like that are just stitched together purely from just the way he delivers the line. Like there's that the murder of silhouette, and like that. Okay, that's a great image already. Murdering a silhouette, and then he goes of crows. It's okay. You know, a murder is the collective noun for a crows, and as we know from Night on Earth and basic pop culture, the Birds references, that the presence of crows is never a good omen. When he was talking to Terry Gilliam for Black Book magazine in an article called Grim Reapers, Waits says, "Oh, crows. Well, crows are the teenagers of the bird world." And they say that the trouble with crows is that by 9 o'clock they've done all their work and they've got too much time on their hands. When they spend the rest of the day playing a primitive form of rugby or playing keep off the nest, or they'll sit and yap and chat, and they've discovered that there's no biological reason for this. But a crow will sit on an anthill and is completely engulfed by the ants within and be almost in a hypnotic state during their sitting. They say it's the only answer they can come up with, that it's a pleasure for them. It's a type of drug abuse. And I think Tom will, crows will crop up on this album as this symbol of obsession. And it is so it's just a creepy image that like not only like branches are spelling Alice, the water spelling Alice, but he's constantly being hounded by these crows that are watching every single one of his moves. You were telling me about his mathematical side. And we do get our first mathematical reference in this song as well, with arithmetok, which is just fantastic.
Yeah.
It's also just like nonsense, Dodgson, Carolian,
yeah.
Carolian nonsense language, and he will pervade the whole album with this as well. But like Guardian article, there are so many songs on this album that I just thought years ago were just lovely little love songs, like this is so sweet, so cute, and then you find out oh she's like 11.
Yeah.
It gets fucking creepy, like straight away.
It does, and just the fact that you are enveloped in. I mean, the song has a pure sense of oblivion in the true sense of the word, the sense of just the unconscious, the forgotten, And I think that the instrumentation is just mind-blowingly good. We start on that, streamy weather, and then the soft pan of a drum, and then you have Colin Stetson on sax and Ara Anderson on muted trumpet, and they weave just so beautifully, don't they? They create such a sense of drifting, like there's this constant, just you can hear the drums sort of being scratched on the cusp of a beat, but not quite there. And this song, I just think it's one of the perfect. It's interesting because quite a lot of songs on this album, similar to this song, Alice, start literally the first second is Tom singing. Like there's no kind of build. Like, it just kind of draws you in. Lost in the Harbour, We're All Mad Here. I'm sure there's a few others as well. Those are the ones off the top of my head that come in there. And it's incredible, really. It's just, perfect clusters and delicate rises of notes and horns. And I could really listen to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love a 20-minute just version of this where the band just play. I think it's so oddly relaxing without the lyrics. And then when you have kind of, I'll disappear in your name. Just a brilliant line. The lyrics on the whole of Alice, I think, is some of Tom's best work. Like it's unbelievable. Your hair is like meadow grass. So many fantastic images. Aren't you saying with the arithmetok? Supposedly, or this is according to Tom Waits' library, the ever reliable. They were saying that this might be inspired by the Mock Turtles puns from the original Alice in Wonderland in Chapter 9, the Mock Turtle story. And the quote, reeling and writhing, of course, to begin with, the Mock Turtle replied, and then the different branches of arithmetic, ambition, distraction, uglification, and derision. So Waits is obviously either doing really kind of obvious on the nose stuff, and that that is quite on the nose, to be fair to you. But if you know Alice as well, there's lots of winks here to the actual source material, which I think is brilliant.
Yeah, just a couple last things. It's weird that Tom does introduce us to new worlds all the time. Obviously, Singapore and underground. It's just nice how it's the mind of an individual, whether that's the mind of Dodgson or the mind of the character of Alice, is now our canvas for this journey. And then we just going back to the instrumentation, like the xylophone is the ultimate child's instrument, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it just reminds me so much of like fairies and other youthful creatures. And then just as Tom says, there's only Alice, we have this lovely little flourish twinkle at the end of the song. Like, it's worryingly pleasant. Like, is this as happy as this whole album's going to get? And
that felt very
really
musical
kind of
to me. there's only Alice. You know what I mean? That felt like a sort of concession to the fact that we are in a musical and you need to often have songs ending in kind of a narrative, lurid kind of way. And like just the way he extends certain lines, I must be insane. Like, you know, he's aware, that's the dark thing. He's aware that this is wrong, and tracing it twice, how can that not be sexual as well? Like, you know, the idea of tracing, it's just on the cusp of being kind of, you know, unseemly. It's not like grabbing or unrobing or something.
Talking about the ice, he was just talking on that Late Show documentary. He was just saying, yeah, this song's kind of Lewis Carroll. You know, he fell on the ice of a pond and he broke his watch one day and he never got it fixed. And he said, that's what happened to him. He said, as long as the watch was broken, he could always stay in this world that he invented for himself and for her. So it's just such a creepy... like, I don't want to bog this whole podcast down with thoughts of paedophilia and stuff like that, because, you know, we do want to keep it somewhat light in tone, but it's almost inescapable in these songs, isn't it? And there's at least two more that come to mind, which are classically love songs, and then you realise, oh my god, she's a prepubescent girl, and it doesn't sully it, and it doesn't like add this, you know, sort of, oh well, this is the real layer of the true meaning. All it does for me is it's like, oh my god, Tom Waits has now inhabited a woman, he's inhabited a homeless man, he's inhabited this wide range of characters, and now he's inhabiting a paedophile. Like, that is like the zenith, like it's the Kevin Bacon of just going for a role. Like, he's the Daniel Day-Lewis of fucking singer-songwriters.
You could say that he can play everything you can think, which is the name of the next song. That was a weak link, but we start off with the old warm sounds of a train. Beautiful sound, this train, isn't it? It's gorgeous. It sounds like something from an old, like, you know,
can he do a play without a train? I don't think he can.
I hope not. I mean, if anyone's a fan of the underrated, not obscure, but not that popular Nintendo series Animal Crossing, this reminds me a lot of the train sounds in that. Anyone that plays that will probably be reminded of that. So we get into a song where the guitar's back, which is good to hear. This feels very much like a sort of Frank song, doesn't it? It's kind of, you have the strangled guitar lanes. Tom's coming in with that kind of, you know, gruff sort of, you know, world out there. Kind of, again, not explicitly about Alice. We have mentions of dreamland and stuff like that, but it's more about the power of imagination. We are now down the rabbit hole. This is a world in which anything can come out of, and I love the whole soundscape of this thing. So we have the mellotron and the chamberlain. Instruments that he's obviously taken home with him, and he brought a lot of these instruments to the recording. It creates this very artificial world for the whole soundscape to exist on. Like, it's this very surreal and mercurial arrangement that lends itself to the idea of sort of like lucid or lurid dreaming. Like, you know, things seem to both move forwards and backwards, up and down. They twist from harmonic to disharmonic. But, you know, at no point does it ever feel like it's anything less than the pinpoint artistry that we come to expect from Waits. And it almost feels like a demented waltz in places, you know, like, despite these instruments' like relative modernity, they do evoke this sense of the past, like reflecting the period in which Dodgson kind of wrote the book. And then there's these weird sort of do like spirals that go deeper and deeper, like you say, down into the rabbit hole. It's like a carousel, isn't it?
And you were mentioning this to me yesterday, but there are about 5 or 6 songs where the middle just goes off on these crazy little insane digressions into real madness. But I think part of the genius of the madness of this album is that he could have just done 16 versions of this song or 16 versions of Gospel Train and just called it a day. But the fact that he scatters only just a real handful of these quirky, insanity-drenched tracks amongst the greater number of more delicate numbers means that these do stand out as madness all the clearer, and that you never know which one's going to be a mad song and you never know which one's going to be a soft one, and he does catch you off guard.
Totally.
It should be important to mention that, like, yes, Alice, the first song, is Act 1, Scene 1, but this song is actually from Knee Scene 9, so he will not be putting all of these songs in the order that it appeared in the play. He's definitely taking us on more of an auditory journey this time. Just for anyone interested, this is sung by the White Knight. This is basically after Alice has just seen the Jabberwocky, and the Knight kind of explains to her that her thoughts and fears are directly manifested in Wonderland. But lyrically, outside, because like you kind of have to look at all of these songs outside of the play as well, because they all do still have their own sort of inner meaning as well. it's really quite manically creepy. Like, he has that weird laugh at the end, and he...
yeah.
Which is just like he's on this demonic coach from Bram Stoker's Dracula or something, and I almost want to say that he does employ the nonsense language in this song. Like, you know, we've got red flamingo, teeth as buildings on yellow doors.
Red flamingos feature heavily in Wonderland.
Oh, okay.
At the court.
Yeah,
they're in it quite
just for the folks at home, you've read the book. I've only seen the Disney version and the god-awful Tim Burton adaptation, which, funnily enough, as we speak, has just had a new trailer released. And the fantastic Jefferson Airplane song, which is, you know, it is very, very timeless and does stand up with this album, if none of Jefferson Airplane's other work does. Pink has recently just covered it, and it's fucking terrible. But yeah,
good old Pink.
Yeah, we have Fishes Making Wishes, and to say nonsense language almost seems like a slap in the face to a lot of Tom's carefully planned lyricism.
It's not Jabberwocky. I mean, I don't know how nonsensy this song is. It's quite clear. There's some beautiful images. Dig deep in your heart for that little red glow. We're decomposing as we go. So kind of the awareness that we're dying every day and you have to get the most out of life. I love. I don't really like your teeth are buildings with yellow doors. That feels a little juvenile to me, but I do love your eyes are fish on a creamy shore. The idea of the whole face being this littoral aspect, and, like, you know, the eyes are watery and the eyes are oddly sort of fish-like and slippery if you think about it. You know, the pupils are kind of have that weird kind of gibbering aspect to it, and there's just... Yeah, Waits is piling on the imagery here. There's fighting our way up Dreamland's spine as well, and like you say about the madness that happens to these songs, I compared it to the Mad Hatter's Tea Party. There's no real logic or rhyme or reason to this thing. There are just moments in the songs. Lost in the Harbour is another one that it happens in as well, where just this kind of like chaotic force rises up and leaves, and then similar to this song, you know, the train feathers us in, and then train gets us going again, you know, with that chugga 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 chug, and it just takes us. It
almost becomes like a percussive element in the background. It's and you do feel like you're that driving pump, like it's almost like the stomping feet, like just getting closer and closer. Another thing I do like about this is that we do get a return of a Waitsian trope that we really haven't seen for a while, and that is nursery rhymes. The dish ran away with the spoon, and there's probably no more appropriate time for Tom to get back into this than with Alice, and it just fits perfectly. We also have the xylophones back again, and now it's almost parodic when compared to the last song. Like, we now know that this is not a world for children at all. This is not an album for children. Although Tom did say when he was describing the album, like, this is either adult songs for children or children's songs for adults. And you can definitely see that. I mean, this isn't like that album by the Bare Naked Ladies. The name escapes me, but
yeah,
especially with his laugh at the end, it's almost comically scary. The original demo for this song is a little. It's one of the few demos where I think, like, oh wow, I'm glad he redid this. His voice is very much in the Black Rider mode still, you know, with that sort of like it really like he. Come on, Tom, you're not even singing here. So I am glad that he got to do things like Bow Machine and Mule Variations before he came back to this, because it just seems a lot more polished. But going on from that, we go to another quite sad song, really. Like, the words, I'm going to try and use my thesaurus here and not say sad again, because so many songs have sad in here. But we have Flower's Grave. This is sung by The Rose in knee scene 2. The song reduces the flowers to tears, and suddenly we hear a loud chomping noise. The flowers wilt, and then Alice turns around to see something else, which is a giant mushroom. So after this owl attack of everything you can think, we can sit back again and go back into the calmer mode of the album. But again, this calmer mode, like we say, always has this undercurrent of like, when's Tom going to go mad again? And this song is diametrically opposed to the song the flowers sing in the Disney film, which is called All in the Golden Afternoon, which is all about how great it is to be a flower, peace, happiness, romance. And this song is anything but that. And this is one of the songs that literally has endless interpretations and possible layers to peel back. You can read this song however you want. Is this a song about the death of love? You know, Perhaps Alice Liddell is the flower, she is the China rose, and no one leaves flowers on the grave of a dead feeling of love. He is mourning a lack of a tactile symbol for his loss of Alice. This is a song about remembering the dead, and whereas the next song is about someone who isn't remembered after they die. And obviously, flowers being the ultimate symbol when left on a grave, that someone remembers that person who's in that grave. This is about the inevitability of death and the endless life-death cycle. I think that there's that line like, "If we die tonight, another rose will bloom." Flowers have very short lifespans, and they die and are reborn every year. They are eternally youthful in a way. And that is something Dodgson is kind of definitely obsessing over. Like, I couldn't imagine the look on his face if he met a 32-year-old Alice Liddell at all.
No, they obviously they never did meet. Actually, Alice went on to marry quite a famous cricketer at the time, Robert Hargreaves. They had 3 children. Alice did when she was older, and when she married Robert Hargreaves, Carol was not invited to the wedding. But interestingly, 2 of her sons died in well, not interesting in that sense, but you know what I mean. Rest in peace. 2 of her sons died in World War One, and she had a daughter that she called Carol, Caryl, which is like, come on, like, you know what I mean? You could give this kid any name. It's interesting that it keeps there. And Flower's Grave, like you say, I mean, God, this song's beautiful as well. When this song starts, Waits' voice sounds absolutely fantastic. Beautiful, beautiful bridge. If we are to die tonight, is there a moonlight up ahead? And if we are to die tonight, another rose will bloom. The way he sings that softness. And then that chorus, I love when it showers. Like, it just, blooms, for better want of a word, really. The sense of rebirth. And, like, it's quite existential, isn't it, as well? Like, putting flowers on a flower's grave. Because obviously flowers
It's almost comic, isn't it?
Well, flowers aren't buried. They are buried because they die, but it's not a grave per se, and it's quite an existential thing as well, which kind of appeals to a lot of kind of the sort of philosophy of Alice as well. Like, you wouldn't put flowers on the grave like a rotted stump of a mighty oak, or you put flowers on the graves of people. That's it. There's maybe even pets get flowers. I don't think most people would put have pet graves, and if they do, they put flowers on them maybe. But it's beautiful really, in the sense that for me, it's very much a sense of like the deterioration of memory. We're having Dodgson as the flower and Alice as the rain, the only thing that can give him life, the only thing, the thing that is kind of unpredictable, the thing that is in nature, the thing that comes from above, from all around. And it's interesting that the first mention we have is, I love when it showers, but no one puts flowers on the grave. And then the final 2 mentions is, I remember the showers. So the sense that even that sense of love is going, and you can just kind of recall it, but you can't even feel it. And then we have a wonderful outro as well, some really soft instrumentation. It's just, I don't know, it's beautiful, and it reminded me a little bit of Long Way Home. Is there a moonlight up ahead? And he says like, is there a moon up ahead, or whatever like that. So it kind of has it's just a kind of coincidence there. But it's interesting that Waits mentions reference to Silver Moon, which is referencing quite a few Waits songs, and Drunk on the Moon, the old Closing Time. Is that Closing Time or Heart Saturday?
Yeah, it's
Saturday night.
It's
Closing Time. Yeah. He says, quote, and the moon's a silver slipper, it's pouring champagne stars. In all the world is green, he said, the moon is yellow silver on the things that summer brings. And in the world keeps turning, he says, the world don't care and yet it clings to me. And the moon is gold and silvery. So the moon, lunar aspects is a huge influence on writers, time memoriam, and Waits is no different really. But yeah, it's a beautiful track, gorgeous. And I think one of the reasons that I love Alice so much is everything feels cut from the same cloth. Like, kind of in the same way Mule Variations, but on Mule Variations you have Filipino Brock Springhard, Take It With Me, Cold Water. Those songs are all so different, even though they sound like they come out the same pot. You know what I mean? They just kind of, they go different places. Whereas I think most of Alice, I'd say there were 3 songs that kind of up the tempo a bit more and kind of take you out. But they all feel concretely of this world. Like, you can definitely feel the DNA of Alice and everything you think in Flower's Grave, in Lost in the Harbour. They all just feel like, just somnambulant. They feel like...
It's interesting you should say that, actually, because... not that we ever like to create controversy on this show. I think we do mostly agree on most points. That sort of uniformity is, towards the end, after you've heard quite a few of the songs, is actually one of the downsides of the album to me. But we'll obviously get onto that later. Just to sum this up, the strings and the oboe are perfectly self-reflexive. I think I can't help but get really introspective whenever I hear this song. And one of the things about the Alice album is that, being the upsetting not sad Waits album that it is probably the only reason that I really didn't revisit it as often as I'd like. Like despite the songmanship being absolutely stellar, it is hard to get yourself into the Alice mood in a very casual fashion. Like obviously we've had to force ourselves to sit down and listen to it as a whole 10, 20 times each. But I couldn't imagine what mood I would be in casually to pop Alice on. I mean, you'd never pop on Alice at a party, would you?
Well, no, you'd never put on Tom Waits at a party.
Nighthawks, maybe.
Maybe it's too dense, you know.
Yeah, I know.
They want DJ Handjob or whatever.
There's also, like we were saying earlier, there's the possibility of dying tonight. That again, there are these hints of the desperate, suicidal man. And is this a suicidal man who knows he's done wrong? You know, does he know that what he's doing to this Alice little girl is wrong? Or is it the suicide of a man who can't bear being apart from the one who he loves in a true moment of despair? And speaking of being apart, we have No One Knows I'm Gone, the first of the mini songs on this album. Really, there are I believe there are 3. The last one being Fawn, and the middle one. I'm
Still Here.
I'm Still Here. Thank you, Tom. Tell me about No One Knows I'm Gone.
Yeah, No One Knows I'm Gone is terrific. Again, the sense of lineage in this album, the sense of kind of all being of one world comes, even further with No One Knows I'm Gone. This is very much Flowers Grave 2 kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful lyrics, very very slow song, very short song. The melodies on this whole album feel very earthy to me, or they feel very real. They feel like this is how it should be sung. It just feels very natural. The images, the firmament being flipped, the world inverted. We're in kind of like Earth Died Screaming territory here, hell above, heaven below. All the trees being gone. And Waits was actually asked, quite stupidly, in some interviews. Someone said, on the tune No One Knows I'm Gone, you sing, the rain makes such a lovely sound to those who are 6 feet underground. How could you know that? And he said, okay, I know. Like, are you a music journalist? What? Okay, all right. He says, I made that up. I really don't know what that means. I pictured her going down the rabbit hole, and I like to imagine what it's like down there. I'm sure it's different for everyone that's dead. And I didn't get any notes on Graveyard John. In the second verse.
I don't know who that is either. Like,
that's not an Alice reference.
If Google can't find it, it doesn't exist, and it's not in the Barney book. It's not in your book of interviews, and it's not in my book of interviews either. So, it's one of those things that Tom will take it with him when he goes. I'm sure. Yeah.
No, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that song. Actually, Take It With Me. So I was thinking about that because I mean, this song again is testament to the idea of memorials and how there's no such thing as immortality. At least when you die, in regards to Earth, even the grand kings who have their mausoleums or the paupers who have their graves, eventually no one will know they're gone. And it's kind of that sad truth. And the only consistency is the leaves just falling and burying and falling and burying. That kind of sense of the flower's grave again.
Well, it is interesting you should say that because again, on the one level, as you say, it's about no one knows Alice is in Wonderland, but this is an ode to the forgotten, and it is a very universal fear that all humans have. I mean, just look at fucking ancient Egypt. That is just a testament to man's obsession with being remembered. But the real irony is that now Dodgson and Little are now, for better or worse, unforgettable. They are truly established and immovable as a part of the modern cultural lexicon, really.
As most culturally influential book of all time, I will say it.
And they will never be forgotten. There's not a lot more we can say about this one, really. No. It's a very saccharine, sweet little track. It has the classic Alice Fawny Flowers Gravy arrangements, which are all of those songs sound like perfectly suitable requiems in their own right, and like I say, it does tie more nicely into that earthy sound of the album. The demo, odd enough, has no lyrics at all, but acts as this very sorrowful and tear-inducing little instrumental, and it does swell a little bit more to the end, which makes it a little bit more of a heartbreaking crescendo. But yeah, I think the rain made such a lovely sound to those who are 6 feet underground could potentially be one of the lines of the album.
Yeah, it's an incredible album.
Just for the context, this song is actually called Leave Me Golden, Tell Me Dark in the play, and it's sung by Alice in scene 1, just as the rabbit sort of runs off and she realises, bam, she's in Wonderland.
Leave Me Gold and Tell Me Dark. Great title as well. No one knows I'm Gone's a great title as well, but I love Leave Me Gold and Tell Me Dark. That's beautiful. But we move on from heartfelt paeans to what's described in Tom Waits the Tom Waits library as untranscribable fantasy German. This is common issue Spate, Sam.
Leigenfleisch, Rügenpeer. Like, just before I get into my autobiographical relationship with common issue Spate.
Mm-hmm.
Whilst there are literally very little words in this song, it's one of the most fun Tom Waits songs to try and sing along to. Like, sei publish! Like, he is having so much fun in this song. But yeah, my earliest memory of common issue Spate, which I think in the original demos it was common, Eat, Zoot and Spate, all as separate words.
Yeah.
I had this huge data dump of Tom Waits songs, and Alice was included. But Alice as an album, I don't know if it's the same for you, it didn't really exist as an album for me, and neither did many of Tom Waits' other albums. So in an attempt to just find shit that I liked and, what would stick, that isn't just Filipina Box Spring Hog and Big in Japan, I just put the whole, 300, 400 songs on shuffle, and, see what I'd like. And for reasons that we'll get into, obviously, I remember this one boring itself into my impressionable, young, and beat-fixated musical mind, and it made a very comfortable little room for itself in my mind forever. And then I remember that I'd gone on holiday to Malaga with my family. This was years ago, and I had to go on a 2-mile trek to get internet all the way up to this golf club. Which came with the little flat we rented, and I'd sent you a message the night before listing my favourite Tom Waits, my top 5 favourite Tom Waits songs, and I was about 17 at this point. I'm nearly 24 now, and I put my top 5 were Low Down off Orphans, Kommen nicht zu spät, I Don't Want to Grow Up, Telephone Call from Istanbul, and Tom Talbot's Blues. So after trudging 2 miles just to see what my best friend thinks about this artist that we now both love, I get an Ethernet cable. Again, it really dates the story. I plug it in, and I find that my best bud has written back, and I scrolled all the way through.
Oh my god! I literally don't know what you're going to say now. By the way,
I trawled through the entirety of our Facebook conversations here, and you put one of the worst top 5 Tom Waits lists I've ever seen. We need to chat and then fight about this when you get back. Yours sincerely, Prof. BZ.
Oh my god.
Which was your old nickname.
Yeah, we don't need to get into that.
Professor Badass,
that is a bad top 5 though. You have to be fair enough. It's a bad top 5.
And I didn't even put Telephone Call from Istanbul big time. I think I just mean the Franks Wildiest version, which obviously
there's not any ballads or anything on there. There's no light or shade. We've just gone for all these explosive.
And we know you hate Tom Talbot's Blues as well. But yeah, Kommen nicht zu spät. It has this crank of gears, and it's really sort of industrial and grindy and almost Eraserhead-esque. And it's like this wind-up toy being prepared, and we get to build up the energy and the tension, and suddenly it just bursts and the song is unleashed. And, it is a highlight, as it is just this thing that bigs up the artifice of the album and the artifice of the play that it appears in, and in a sense allows itself just to go completely balls to the walls without being hindered by plot or rhyme or reason. And in terms of what I've heard of the Wilson plays, this one really does feel like it is part of a live production. Like it's got boom, 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 boom. It has this very malleable playfulness to the beat where you can imagine the actors on stage running back and forth to it very easily. It's Alice's funkiest bass line. It's as jolly as as the arrangements on this album's going to get, and the drums as well. The percussion's out of control. We've got stomps, oil drums, frame drums, like those old Kefler things for Irish bands, unintelligible smacks, and this lumbering pump of the brass. And the saxophone in this song is almost a Marc Ribot-esque guitar part, and it's interesting that Kathleen. I actually didn't find that Kathleen said, "Let's figure out these problems without guitar," because it does just kind of fill in the gaps in the narrative when need be, and further stirs the pot really. and then it turns into this mad solo that's just off the fucking chain about halfway
Crazy.
through, and it's performed by Bon Iver and Arcade Fire regular Colin Stetson.
Oh,
And it's-
right, is that right? That's
yeah,
cool.
yeah, and it's a complete powerhouse and fills the void that was the original demo, which had no saxophone. And again, the original demo is very much the Black Rider sort of "Sei publish." It's not what we know as Community Spate. And if you listen closely, we get a cameo from the Waits instrument, which is the marimba. The marimba is back. I've missed it. I've missed the marimba, and it's great that he still finds new ways to use such an odd instrument.
Yeah, totally. I mean, he was lyrically, obviously, this is mostly mumbo jumbo, but there is, and we can't be late, which is a pretty clear reference to the White Rabbit. But he was being interviewed as part of the press kit for Anti, and he basically is talking about quote, one of the songs on there that's on Alice, Common Issue Spate, which is actually there are a few words in there that have real meaning, but the rest is just pure gibberish. But a lot of people, when they hear it, they say, "Gee, I didn't know you spoke Romanian," or "I didn't know you spoke the odd dialect of Finland." I have been known to tell them that I do speak those languages, but truthfully, I don't.
The title itself is a bastardization of the German phrase "Komm nicht zu spät," which means "don't be late." And the other line, "Sei pünktlich," means "be on time." So there are these little references to Alice throughout. But yeah, carry on.
No, it's just this song makes sense in the context of Waits' musical career as well. Reminds me a lot of, say, stuff like Oily Night or Russian Dance or Gospel Train. These kind of Night on Earth Black Rider songs. These kind of, rumpy kind of, like you speaking about Colin Stetson earlier, and I completely agree. He's unbelievable. Like he's giving this. It's almost like he's got free lungs. Like he's just giving so much air to these notes. He's really rinsing them out. It reminded me a lot of Fred Tackett, who featured... Sorry, not Fred Tackett. Pete Christeleb. Pete Christeleb. Fred Tackett's the guitar player. Sorry, there's been so many sidemen now. Fred Tackett was the ex-Little Feat guitar player who played on Falling Down and most of Frank's. Pete Christeleb is the tenor saxophonist who plays on Step Right Up. And it reminds me of a little bit of Step Right Up in the sense that you kind of have the flurry and it's kind of playing with the notes kind of in the verses. And then at the end, it just goes off on one. It just builds its own place. And I saw this great review in the LA Times of Alice, and they described Common Issue Spate as a Weimar Republic cabaret, which I thought was brilliant, very, very accurate. And yeah, the instruments just bubble and bubble and bubble, and there's just this great sense. And Tom's so phlegmy at the start, isn't he? Like, if you were to put this song on, those first 10 seconds, they're going to freak people out. They're going to make people feel uncomfortable. You're not really going to know what's going on. And it's almost like, I'm no kind of rhythmic expert, but it feels like there's almost a beat missing. It kind of comes in a little early when it should come in maybe a little later than it should, and it kind of catches you off guard as well. But oh my God, that power, I just got to sort of, it's almost like I'm doing a front crawl with my arms. I just feel like enveloped by the just majesty of this song. And coming before this, we have Flower's Grave and No One Knows I'm Gone, and then boom, Common Issue Spate, what up?
It is also great that within the metatextuality of Dodgson's writing of nonsense language, Waits kind of addresses the meta artifice of it being a German production. So he melds these two things together and comes up with nonsense German instead. And I just think thematically, it couldn't be more of a perfect song, really.
Totally, and we also have Tim Allen features on this track. He's on the Scraper. So we have this German track.
You mean Buzz Lightyear?
Yeah, Buzz on this. This is a Latin. The Scraper is a Latin American percussion instrument consisted of an open-ended hollow gourd with parallel notches cut in one side. It's played by rubbing a stick. Do you remember those things you had at school in primary school? You just sort of rub a stick on the side of like a wooden box, and that was kind of the thing. Yeah. So yeah, you rub a stick or a tine across the notches, produce a ratchet-like sound, and it basically requires both long and short strumming between, and you sort of scrape and make some and you can kind of hear it a little bit in there. But Common Issue Spate is maybe doesn't necessarily make sense so much within the Alice world. I mean, I've looked at the track list and it doesn't say who it's sung by. It just says it's played in the third scene. So maybe it's more of kind of a palate cleanser before we go deeper into the rabbit hole. But it's a fantastic song. I love this song.
I'd like to see this song be used to, when you go to see a play and you realise, yes, we have to just accept the fact that they're going to have to rearrange the set a bit, or characters are going to have to move from one place to another, or have a costume change. This would be perfect for that. Just to sort of keep the audience interested. But going from a very, very, very fun song that is endlessly enjoyable, we do have to now go into Well, more Tom's World really now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Another Carl Pilkington song, actually.
Yes.
And to be fair, Paul Schmidt had called Waits' obsession with carnival freaks to be a natural connection to the oddball Victorian sort of sideshow narrative that is Alice. And we all knew that it wouldn't be long before Waits would decide to throw in a reference of some abnormal person on sort of dark album like this. And Tom, do you know much about Edward Mordrake or Mordrake?
I've done some research, and tell us about this guy. Unbelievable. I can't believe he was real.
So Edward Mordrake was the heir of a non-disclosed noble peerage in England. So like maybe he was the son of an MP or a duke or something like that. But he was afflicted by a rare birth defect that resulted in a miniature, fully formed face on the back of his head, and sort of, despite the pleas for doctors to remove it, the medical science of the 1800s certainly wasn't up to scratch. Like, I'm guessing it was connected to his brain, because when he was happy, the face would smile, and when he was sad, the face would frown. So they, it is two faces with one brain, and it's sad, because the irony is that very much like John Merrick the Elephant Man, if Edward Mordrake or Mordrake had been born today, maybe more could have been done to help him, and that is what makes it tragic. But the thing I love about this song is it starts off with gossip. Did you hear the news about Edward? And the way Tom holds that first note for so long is so tantalising. Like, you are on the edge. You're on the edge. You're like, what happened to Edward, Tom? Please tell us. And
from the song title, you know it ain't good. But,
but our curiosity is not going to be rewarded. Our inquisitive freak show, allured nature will only end with the death of this poor man. And worst of all, like, the slight Christianic tinge in this song reminds us that suicide, especially in the Victorian culture, always led to hell. It's like, no matter how much torture a man can go through, it's still, there's no way out. There is no happy ending for some people. And lyrically, despite seemingly having very little to do with the play in a literal sense, it is one of the strongest lyrically on the entire album. And thematically, it does fit seamlessly. Like, it's incomparably depressing. And its ability to convey true powerlessness and the amount of torture one man can put up before he gets desperate is simply breathtaking. And the parallels between Mordrake and Dodgson are quite obvious. These are two men who are helplessly bound to the fate of a woman who they can't escape.
And who, in a sense, is always in the back of their mind.
Yeah. The actual Edward Mordrake, despite the fact that most of his sources come from like weird books, which include like the Pig Woman of Manchester and shit like that, he actually had a bloke's face on the back of his head. But I think Tom made a very definite decision to make it a woman, just so he could draw that parallel with Mordrake and Dodgson a little more clearly. Just getting to the music though, like, you've got these despondent string sections, like it's another funeral track, and the main viola. So wrenching. Like, even if it translates just a fraction of Mordrake's pain when you hear it, it's done its job. And like, it just conveys this innocent loss and the pointlessness of his death, and then like it ends with a reprisal of the main theme, and it's so hard not to get choked up.
Yeah, it's a beautiful track, and the huge lunges of melody on Waits' part. They were in part, which gets mimicked later by Dawn Harms on the violin. It's a beautiful, in terms of a narrative, it's beautiful, not in terms of its reality, but it's wonderful, and the idea of this guy being driven to suicide by the thoughts, by the pure thing. But I love the fact that the song is effectively half lyrics, half instrumental. It's almost half down the middle, as Edward himself. We have this kind of this lyrical side, and then we have this kind of like indolent, quiet side. This detailed, abstract side. And Waits, kind of just building on what you were saying earlier about kind of a face needing to be a girl for the Alice metaphor and stuff. And he said that, quote, "The song is about Edward Mordrake, Mordrake, one of those early last century characters. It's a true story about a man who had a woman's face on the back of his head. It's kind of a sad story. It eventually drove him to madness and suicide, so it has an operatic feeling to it. I tried to get into the mind of that man, but at the same time, it's a metaphor for any kind of obsession or compulsion that might be impossible to control." And just the arching and the tightening of the screws throughout this song, and it's fantastic. I remember asking a friend of ours years ago, Andy Jones, a good friend of the show, I remember asking him at school, what is the saddest Tom Waits song? And without skipping a beat, he said Poor Edward, which I wouldn't say, actually. I'd say there's a song on this album, actually, that I think is a sadder song than Poor Edward. But this is a very, very sad song, a brilliant, brilliant song. And it's interesting as well that, obviously, Edward is kind of gone into popular culture in numerous ways. And I don't watch American Horror Story, but
my dad loves it. Yeah.
There are 3 episodes about him.
Yeah, played by a great actor who appears in so many terrible films. Hopefully, all of you out there are big Sam Mendes fans. Obviously, he just did Skyfall and Spectre, but American Beauty, his sort of first big film. Wes Bentley's fucking fantastic.
Wes Bentley, yeah. He's a good actor. Yeah. Okay. I want to check that out now.
Yeah, but yeah. We also have something called the stro or the straw violin in this song. It's kind of a weird mesh of a horn and a violin, and it gives this song a real banshee wail. Like we can almost hear Edward screaming from hell, and like I love the idea of a devil twin, and even more so the idea that Waits himself knew her too well. Like he knows the real story behind it. Like you've got this obvious sort of the nicer sort of he was free of her, but Tom's like nah. She knew what she was doing, and she killed him.
Yeah. And she spoke to him things heard only in hell. What did she say? What was she selling him?
Just her speaking to him at night would be enough. Just to like the sleep deprivation alone would be enough.
She's like, hey.
Yeah, just go boo like that.
Yeah, what's up?
It is important to say Tom never wanted to exploit poor Edward, because he did say, it is a tragic true story, and it is just horrible obsession, isn't it? In the reverse.
Yeah, and in an interesting way, without this album, we would always known of Alice and Lewis Carroll, but we never would have known of Edward Mordrake or who we're going to get onto next, Johnny Eck. So in a sense, with the No One Knows I'm Gone thing, Tom is providing a very respectful monument to these people.
Like Georgia Lee as well.
Yeah.
Tabletop Joe, Tom, I know you love this one.
I
love this one.
I love this song. Yeah, I think
this is one of the earliest ones you ever spoke to me about in terms of Alice. Like this,
yeah,
I remember back in sixth form, Sam listened to like it's almost Small Change-esque, this song.
It is, and I made huge points early on in this podcast of hating Tom's scat stuff, and I still kind of do. And this is his scat stuff, but he's in character to a certain extent, and he's going through this. This kind of Jelly Roll Morton, Treme, New Orleans throwback. Like the melody is just like it's so singable, and like for me, the chorus, like singing Tabletop Joe, it's like he's throwing like a fish hook out into the ocean. It just feels like you're being thrown with the propulsive nature of this. The whole band's incredible as well. Joe Gore on guitar, you can hear him on the acoustic guitar. Interestingly, who's on the drums?
Who?
Stuart Copeland of The Police.
Oh, really? That's
yeah. Who after The Police has been in numerous things, including doing all the music for Spyro the Dragon, the fantastic PlayStation 1 game.
Yeah, the drums do have a sort of a really fun snare to them. Like it gives it a bit of a razzmatazz, doesn't it? Like that, and it just kicks the song right off in this brilliant sort of. It's just so uplifting. We've had this dark dirge freak show song, and now it's a man who has no legs, but he still can make humour about it. Like he has trouble with the pedals. Just like that.
Yeah. No, it is. Yeah, he does have a humour, and obviously we should probably just explain quickly that this is about Johnny Eck. So John Eckhart Jr. was born on August 27th, 1911, as a fraternal twin. His brother Robert was also a performer, and he had an older sister called Caroline. Eck was born with a truncated torso, so basically there's nothing below his legs. He just has his thing. And though Eck would sometimes describe himself as snapped off at the waist, he had unusable, underdeveloped legs and felt that he would hide under and feet that he would hide under custom-made clothing. At birth, Eck weighed 2 pounds and was less than 8 inches in length. He would eventually reach a height of 18 inches. Though Eck capitalised on resemblance between himself and his and Robert, his brother, the twins were fraternal. So basically, he started walking on his hands and then became a great pianist and a great artist. And I don't mean to be morbid here, but obviously this is the Alice, so I kind of have license to do that. What was his anatomy? Like, I wanted to look underneath this guy. Like, how was he alive?
You want to see his junk, yeah?
Well, I just want to see what's there. Is it just stumps? Obviously his organs are all fine, but...
Does he have an ass? Does he have an asshole?
He doesn't have an ass, no. No, yeah, exactly. Johnny Eck, of course, is kind of like gone into popular culture as well. Tom was interviewed on an Australian radio show, Triple J, in 2002, and he's speaking about quote, "Oh yeah, Johnny Eck is the Eck brothers. They were twins. One was normal sized anatomy, and the other Johnny was." His body stopped at the waist. He was called the man born without a body, but he played the piano and, he had his own orchestra. He was a big hit in Coney Island. Anyway, they had an act together on stage where he would saw his brother in half. And, of course, at the end of the procedure, Johnny would come out of the box and walk on stage on his hands, to the thrill and astonishment of the viewers. Anyway, it's just like kind of a tip of the hat. So I nicknamed him Tabletop Joe because he used to be, on a kind of pedestal, literally and figuratively, because he had no legs. Kind of a tribute to Johnny Eck, or anyone really who's in show business, who has the dream to go into show business, always discovering something about them that makes them unique. You have a big nose, or no hair, or a funny way of talking, or standing. And obviously Eck is best known as being in Todd Browning's Freaks. Apparently he also appeared as a bird creature in the Tarzan films. Which I'm not aware of. And a Hollywood film about the life of Johnny Eck has been pursued by Leonardo DiCaprio since the 1990s. A screenplay has been written by Caroline Thompson, whose most famous work is Edward Scissorhands. And production was meant to start a few years ago. And apparently production notes that James Franco, possibly to play Johnny Eck.
And they'll probably just give him like a green screen set of trousers.
Well, I guess James and Dave, couldn't you? Because I guess Johnny was a brother with Robert as well. But yeah, as a song, this is just a terrific song. It doesn't. You kind of know what it is from the start. There aren't any weird movements or digressions in it. It's just a very, very enjoyable bit of blues. And like you say, Johnny is taking this in his, Tabletop Joe, Johnny, he's taking this in his stride, even though he literally can't stride, but like he's taking it in like metaphorically, and it's a joyous track. There is no misery here, and even though his mama didn't want him or whatever, he has music, and that weights.
Well, he's a relentless optimist, isn't he? He's overcoming trials through a sheer will and love of his music. Cough, cough. Is this like someone else we talk about on this podcast? Yeah. Johnny Eck's actually also in the Black Rider Lucky Day Overture as well, I think.
Yeah, and this is kind of an eyeball kid, isn't it, as well? It's kind of
it's funny you should mention eyeball kid, because in the original We're All Mad Here, there is a segment about the eyeball kid, and he's born without a body. Although I don't believe Johnny Eck was born without a brow, but no. It is clear that Johnny Eck may have been partly some of the inspiration for the eyeball kid. Again, we have to stress, Alice was not written in 2000. It was written back in 91, 92.
Before Mule.
Before Mule. Before even So even before some of the eyeball kid references in a Bow Machine as well. And it is just weird how, again, as I said earlier, when Tom gets his teeth into something, he will get it out onto a record. But yeah, this is a real toe tapper. It's the closest thing the album has to a commercial track. Yeah. It's got a bit of a barroom live lounge feel. Maybe even Johnny Eck himself is playing on the piano, and it's probably the most sing-alongable song on the album as well. And if you had to, we mentioned how you wouldn't put Alice on at a party. If you were at gunpoint and you had to put on a song from Alice on with a group of friends, I'd probably pick this one.
Yes, yeah, and the lyrics are great. The man without a body proved everyone wrong. He was rich and he was famous. He was where he belonged. And that final Tabletop Joe, when you know his story and you understand that this is a triumph, you really are singing along with him. And this song makes me so happy. I can't explain it. It's one of the happiest for me. It just something about this delivery, this old school Coney Island on the pier. The fact that he can play Stravinsky on a baby grand as well. I love that kind of baby grand, and he's so small as well, and he's playing that sort of piano. Obviously, baby grand is still a giant piano, but it's just really, funny lyrics. And who wouldn't know Tabletop Joe? But crucially, we know Tabletop Joe because he's Johnny Eck, because he's a freak. He claims himself, but people know him because of his piano skills. Like it's kind of almost apropos that he would be a freak. He's such a good pianist, doesn't really matter. And one of the more anomalous songs on Alice is Tabletop Joe. But I love this track, man.
So moving on to more classic Alice, Lost in the Harbour. One thing I've just got to say, can you hear the pages turning in this song?
I hadn't, no, but that's interesting. No,
several times you can hear Tom literally turning like sheet music, like it's really interesting sound. But yeah, this is a wonderfully sincere song, and it's another somber one. You've got that sonorous pump organ, like the world's saddest little circus is coming to an end, and it's this depressing ballad essentially about poverty and economic conflict, and about how in conflict it affects both sides. Like, both sides want roses, both sides want wool for clothes, diamonds and stuff, but neither of them can get them, and nor will they work together towards said goals because of things like walls and silly things like that. And like the use of the very vague over here and over there not only allows the song to be literally about anywhere, but it highlights the fact that no matter where you go, if there are humans, they will always themselves will always have an over there full of folk that do exist in the same way as them. We've spoken about Sonder before. Again, we have the great, almost 2001 A Space Odyssey-esque like breakdowns that go completely 180 degrees in terms of progression and tone. Like, you hear moans and wails coming down the corridor of an asylum, and the instruments strain to fight the dissonance. And it's like the song's message is so nice that the whole album won't let it rest and be peaceful. Like, there is always this internal conflict right in the middle of things. And yes, you can bookend things with a nice little melody, but in the middle there's always going to have to be conflict before there's resolution.
Yeah, and the resolution in this song is so nourishing though, because it's a bit like it's a nice melody when it comes in over here, and like I said before, there are many songs on this album that just start, and this is one of them, and it kind of like you say, it's calculating the kind of diametric opposites of these worlds. And Waits himself was interviewed for the Globe and Mail in Canada, and he was talking about this song, and he said, quote, "That's the Humpty Dumpty situation, looking over one side of the wall and the other, over here, over there. It's East Berlin, West Berlin, Palestine and Israel, Northern Ireland, the enemies that are really kind of neighbours as well. The harbour is the meeting point. It's about conflict resolution." So when we get to that point in the song when it unites, it feels good, doesn't it? The harbour, and you can hear all the instruments come together, and there is a harmony briefly, and then we go back out again. And if you want to kind of tarry this onto Dodgson, which you don't really need to, the song itself, this Lost in the Harbour, works really well outside of the context of the play. Even though it kind of does take place literally when Alice meets Humpty Dumpty, and they have this kind of argument about if there's a door in a wall, does it lose its wallness, which is very Wonderland-esque. But if you're going to look at Carol, perhaps you can sort of say, what he wants is impossible, and there's no way he can get it. He has this inner division. He is poor Edward. He is lost in the harbour. He is between all these worlds. And it reminds me a little bit of In the Neighbourhood as well, just in its kind of its softness and how it comes together, getting all these disparate elements. There's lovely whistling, the immense wall of sound that comes in, and the gentleness, the idea of the harbour, the idea of the nautical, the idea of the waves coming in and out. This is another great track, another song that feels very coherent within the mesh of the album, a song that works well thematically throughout. Tom and Kathleen have clearly gone to great pains to make this sound really as a piece, and they're pulling it off with aplomb, really. And Lost in the Harbour is another diamond track on this incredible release.
Yeah,
not too much to say on that one.
It's one of those songs where everything we could say would just be a retread of. We really like it. Next, we have one of the most overt references to the source material.
Yeah.
It's a direct quote from the Cheshire Cat, but will be sung by the Dormouse, March Hare, and now the far too famous for my liking Mad Hatter.
Yes.
This is We're All Mad Here. You can hold me. Oh, it's so good. I love this song so much. Like, Waits reinstates his really commanding, throaty rumble of a growl, and it's just another whimsically fun Waits song to try and impersonate. Like, this is the go-to track for me to explain where Tom has come from. Like, if you have to pick two songs to show a weird jump, like, I don't know, picture postcards and then just jump to We're All Mad Here.
Yeah.
And could you imagine what a leap? How has this man done this? And what can you say about this song? It's mad. It really is. You've got this plucking of the violin that's so threatening, blum 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 blum, and this clarinet with this droning wood. Like, it creates this expanse of wooden space. Like, how many mad people are here? And I didn't hear this until a very recent listen, but the overall tune of the song is rather coyly played in the background on piano throughout the entire run. It's a blum 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 blum. Yeah. And just to say, I think if you had to come up with a list of almost commodian rules for the podcast, a good pair of quality earphones that are not Beats by Dre are required for Waits fans, because you will find so many things.
Oh yeah, he's a real audiophile. Yeah, he puts a lot of little nuances and creases in the music, and yeah, it's funny you talk about that. Like, this is a crazy song, but similar to, say, a Clap Hands or a Cemetery Polka, when you break it down, there is that melody there. Do 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 do. You know, there is that kind of sense that you can kind of grip onto, and as you're saying as well, the title of the song obviously comes from the book directly. This is from chapter 6, Pig and Pepper, quote, "But I don't want to be among the mad people," Alice remarks. "Oh, you can't help that," said the Cheshire Cat. "We're all mad here. I'm mad, you're mad." So there is that kind of sense of kind of the universalness of madness, and we hear of Mrs. Carroll as well in the lyrics of this song, which is quite interesting, running off with Reverend Judd. I couldn't really get any information on that either, but
Reverend Judd is a very almost Night on Earth-esque reference. Someone runs off with a priest in that. But yeah, it's just a weird, almost.
And then there's that little voice at the end, isn't there? Like the VH1, the recorder. Like there's just like you can hear this little voice in the left speaker, kind of screaming in and out. Like, yeah.
And the drums as well are so deep, and they resonate with a real thwang. It's so imposingly creepy, like a big stomping Jabberwock. He's getting closer and closer to you. You know what I mean?
And I've only just noticed that this song has lyrics We're All Mad Here has lyrics very similar to Everything You Can Think Of Is True. So I pointed out earlier that I really like the lyric, "Your eyes are fish on a creamy shore," from Everything You Think Of Is True. And at the end of this it says, "Your eyes will die like fish and the shore of your face will turn to bone." So, which I kind of like more, actually. He talks about eyeballs roll this terrible terrain. We're all inside a decomposing train. You know, that is hell for Waits, really. You know, that the train is kind of disintegrating, as it were. But yeah, "Let the crows pick me clean for my hat." Just wonderful, wonderful just lyrics here. And this is probably the most Wonderlandy song, isn't it, of Alice?
You've also got the opening line, obviously, "You can hang me in a bottle like a cat." And I generally didn't know this up until yesterday, about 20 minutes before I was going to bed, just doing my last sort of check of the notes. Apparently this is from William Shakespeare's Much Ado About Nothing, Act 1, Scene 1. And Benedict, I'm a big Shakespeare fan. I have not touched Much Ado About Nothing.
Right.
He says, "If I do, hang me in a bottle like a cat and shoot at me." And basically, in the Tom Waits library, it's very accurate, but this is such a vague time they put. It says, "In olden times," that's like, oh, fucking hell, "a cat was used for sport and was enclosed in a bag or leather bottle and hung from the branch of a tree and was like a mark for bowmen to shoot at." So I don't know what Tom's saying here. Is he just saying like, make me vulnerable, make me open, have a go at me? I don't know.
I suppose the idea of bottles is big in Wonderland as well, isn't it? Drink me and shrinking and growing large. So maybe it's kind of amalgamation of the both.
It's also very much like Tabletop Joe. It's one of the least unpredictable tracks on the album. It's almost an ironic middle finger to its mad title. And for me, the song is actually a little short and seems to go a little too quickly for me. I could have had another minute of bum bum bum.
I agree. Yeah, it is a little
bum.
short.
And the demo of this song is again very much a part of the comical Black Rider voice variety. But the instrumentation is almost unrecognisable. Like, it's very much a strong string presence, like jun 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 jun. It's almost like Jaws, and it actually features. "Did I tell you about the eyeball kid? He was born inside a petri dish." It's like, what? Oh wow, the eyeball kid is this early. Tom, it's like he needs to get this eyeball kid out. It's almost like that film. It's one of the Nightmare on Elm Streets, where it's about how you have to write about the character for them to be real, and you have to get them out of you before it kills you.
Right.
But yeah, fantastic track.
Great song. And honestly, the next song as well, "Watch Her Disappear," I think is equally fantastic. This is the probably the most explicit in terms of the arousal and obsession with Alice, isn't it? Even more so than the opening track. Tom's talking directly to Alice, Dodgson is "Last night I dreamed of you," and it's kind of would you call this a spoken word track?
It's the closest thing to a spoken word track, and it is nice that he does put it on, because in the play, this is Dodgson again looking at letters of Alice, and the Cheshire Cat actually comes into the real world and starts crumbling up all of his letters to Alice, which is a really weird image. And again, it's like, I used to have a real affection for this song back in the day. Like last night I was dreaming of you, Ebony Curls. And it's like, this woman sounds really beautiful. She's 11. Fucking hell. It's so creepy. Tom inhabits Dodgson probably more perfectly than any other character he's ever done, except for maybe like Christmas Card from a Hooker in Minneapolis, which is the non-Waitsian song.
Certainly, yeah. And like, I mean, kind of slightly unseemly lines aside, the description throughout this track is fantastic. The air is wet with sound, the faraway yelping of a wounded dog. Talks about a light goes on and the door opens and a yellow cat runs out on the stream of a hall light and into the yard. Just fantastic images. But for me, similar to the falling beneath the ice of Alice, I cannot get out my head the idea of him watching this person dancing into the shadow of a tree and then disappearing. It's just fantastic. I mean, Cheshire Cat aside, obviously Cheshire Cat famously disappears into a tree, or at least most of it does, and the eyes are sort of waiting there or whatever. But just, I'm enamoured with that image and the fact that I watched you as you disappeared, and it just grows, whispered, and like, that's essentially all Dodgson can do. He can't act on his feelings. He just watch as this girl that he's obsessed with leaves his life forever. And I was thinking, why does he say poplar tree? So I did a little bit of research on some hippie websites and what trees represent. And apparently the poplar tree is a tree of transformation and vision. Which kind of makes sense. But I suppose like they could have put anything and it kind of would have worked. You know what I mean? It could have been the tree of love or the tree of paedophilia, or I don't know, whatever. No, I don't think there is an official tree of that. I hope not anyway.
Treedophilia, but yeah.
Treedophilia, very good, yeah.
There are moments in this song like strangled ebony curls and the yelping of the wounded dog do again offer that unsettling potential for violence in this relationship, or at least potential for something to go very wrong. Mm-hmm. But lyrically, though, this is basically just poetry set to music.
Yes.
And every single image, like you say, is so crystal clear to the listener. And the specificity of each moment highlights just how ingrained these images are within the memory of Dodgson. And, like, if he doesn't remember these key bits, like, his obsession will start to wane somewhat. And every little detail does allow him to be closer to her. And just the idea that he's so obsessed that he dreams about her in his dreams. Like, he cannot escape it. It's such an instantly invigorating image. But musically, the violin and cello are so wonderfully
amazing,
minimalist and non-intrusive. And the accompaniment to the pump organ, it's another one of those Waits songs where he realises that the words are the most important and he doesn't want to distract you from them, and he achieves it perfectly with that kind of innocent When You Dream 77 kind of vinyl quality to it. Its soundscape, like last night. It does have that crackle to it. And as I mentioned a few podcasts ago, listening to Alice on vinyl is another experience. Like it does give you that sort of aged quality. Like you do feel like you are literally going back in time somewhat.
Mm-mm. And like you said, the cello, Matt Brubeck on the cello, especially when he's repeating the Watch You As You Disappear, you can hear him just casting these wonderful shapes on the fretboard, these wonderful kind of lines that he's just kind of dragging Waits down, and just the imagery is outstanding. Like it feels very American to me though, like a string of yellow carnival lights come on with the dusk, circling the lake with a slowly dipping halo. Like it's just vivid as hell. Like it is a kind of
champagne
wonderland.
laugh. Oh.
Champagne laugh, and again the dancing into the shadow of the tree. I mean, the whole thing really is, and we haven't even touched upon the fact that he watches her undress in his dream.
I didn't want to get to that, Tom. If I'm honest, I wanted to gloss over that bit, but the listeners can read into that what they will, because like they don't really show those photos online. All of the photos, like there's about. Fucking hell. The Daily Mail, for anyone who is not a part of England, it's kind of
it's a massive website worldwide actually.
Yeah. Okay. Well, like it's this kind of cesspool of shit little articles veering more towards the right, and it's almost like annoyingly. It does pander to the working classes a bit in the sense that if you look down the right-hand side of each article, it's basically just each article starts off with Kim Kardashian shows off her curvaceous body, and there's nothing about like the Iraq War or anything like that. But on the Daily Mail site there are literally 5 articles all about Carol being a paedophile, and it's just like this kind of modern obsession with paedophiles, weirdly like. on our end, you know, these pederasts are obsessed with children, and then anyone who's not a paedophile is obsessed with rooting out and finding out who is a paedophile. And all of these articles, they show all of these pictures that he took of Alice Liddell. And I think for the best part, they don't show any of the nude ones, but they actually did make up the majority of all these photographs. And the most famous one is of Alice Liddell as like a gypsy girl. Mm-hmm. And God, it's just so creepy.
It is, and I used to work in a bookstore, Waterstones in Oxford, and obviously Oxford is, you know, Alice in Wonderland town. Like, you know, there's Alice Day every July where they have all the festivals and parades and stuff. You know, it's obviously cult book, and we would sell Alice in Wonderland all the time. We did a display recently, and one of the books we sold was a big hardback book, the photography of Lewis Carroll. And I remember skimming through it with a friend, and we were just it was creepy. It was like, how are we looking at this at like 1 p.m. on a fucking Tuesday afternoon or something? Like, it is very, very weird. And like, maybe it's in vogue. Maybe that's just, you know, like you say, photography was a much more defined art form back then, but his predilections are sinister. But, you know, it's not to say that he's alone in his macabre obsessions. There's Reaper Barn as well, which I guess in a sense is kind of like a real life Wonderland, like kind of like, you know, the land of freaks.
Reaper Barn, for those who don't know, it is in Hamburg, and it actually meant a lot more to you and me, actually, even before we even got into Tom Waits, because the Reaper Barn is it's this place where all the sailors come, and the prostitutes go, and the drinkers, and the violent guys, and it's where a little band called the Beatles first started out.
Yeah.
And you know, we obviously had Commentary of Spate, which is nonsense Deutsch, and now we have, you know, probably the most explicit reference of the Germanic origin, which is Reaper Barn. And sort of going back to my original cachet of somewhat illegally downloaded Tom Waits tracks in my early days, before I bothered to buy his whole discography out of this sheer overwhelming guilt that I'd ripped off possibly the greatest songwriter of all time. I now have all of his albums. I think except Orphans, because it's just really expensive. Yeah. And like, I actually bought. I remember like loving Reaper Barn, and I remember describing it to our friend Danny, and I kind of did an impression of it, and I was like, around the curve of the parrot bar, and then he was like, Sam, what the fuck are you talking about? And like, it never really got brought up again. Like, we had like an argument about it, and then I bought Alice on vinyl, and then what I was used to was this mad little falsetto Waitsian track, and what I got was the album version we're discussing now, which is around the curve of the parrot bar. And for years, apparently, it turns out I've been admiring the frankly superior Alice demo version of this song.
Ah.
Yeah, and it's much quicker. It's like a real trip into madness. And like, he starts crying at the end, like, down there in the river bar. Like, it's really fun.
I've never heard that. Yeah, I need to check that.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely put that on the Twitter.
Yeah, of course.
There are only 4 or 5 of the Alice demo tracks on YouTube. I think whether Waits is on the ball like George Harrison's estate and literally destroying anything that's not a paid for version, or whether just people can't find it. Like, you can torrent it off certain sites, but yeah, not many of them look that good. I can't find a good Alice demo on Pirate Bay.
No,
but yeah, the demo frankly is superior. But let's talk about the album track. Firstly, it's Tom Waits' banjo that's not in your face and overused, which is great.
Yeah.
But yeah, the 4 verses each tell a little mini story that build up the world of the Reaper Barn piece by piece, and it's a masterpiece, a masterclass of flawless, ominous storytelling, really. And it's got a bit of a pitch black humour, and it's got this sort of Jewish folk song arrangement. But it's like just these characters, these lost souls, these losers and fractured humans that exist within the Reaper Barn are all just so vivid. And it is just Waits at his best as a musician, vocalist and storyteller. Obviously you've got to give credit to Kathleen where it's due as well. But this is one of my favourite Tom Waits songs of this album, and possibly of all time as well.
Wow, this is one of my least favourite, I have to say. I think it's too long. It's quite monotonous. I don't know. I think lyrically it's fun, but it just feels a bit kind of Seven Dwarfs at the end for me. I don't know. It feels a little un-Alice-y. This has got nothing to do with Dodgson. I mean, okay, he's kind of parlaying to the German origins and stuff like that, and it's not a bad song at all. Like it's quite fun, and like I especially like the verse about Hans as well, where
it's always strange, yeah.
But his homophobic father still accepts his now gay son because he's in the Reaper barn, which is
no. He accepts him because he's now rich from making women's lingerie. Yeah. Now his lingerie is all the rage in the back of every page. Now his father proudly calls his name down there in the Reaper barn.
Yes.
But you know what? Before you go and slag off one of my favourite Tom Waits songs, I've just got to get something clear here. And I'm pretty sure everyone out there, correct me if I'm wrong, but go back and listen to Reaper Barn now. Pause this. Go listen to the full Reaper Barn now, because I'm almost 100% sure that if you go back during the la lie 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 bit, that distinctive backing vocal track in the closing moments, something tells me, based on what I've read about their relationship and how they write, that you hear this other voice, this softer feminine voice, and I am pretty damn sure that it's Kathleen Brennan singing with her husband on this track. Please go back now, listen to it and come back. I think that is Kathleen Brennan singing on a Tom Waits album, singing with her husband.
Jeez.
And it's beautiful because you hear this la la la, like, and it builds him up. And again, we've spoken that Tom really doesn't use backing vocals that much, but in this moment, it's a real tangible part of the Kathleen Brennan relationship, if it is that. And if it's not, and it turns out Bette Midler wandered in, I'm gonna be very pissed off.
Oh, Bet, yeah, maybe it is, maybe, but again,
or Ricky Lee Jones.
I'll be a little harsh. It's not a terrible song or anything. It's not really for
It's not
me.
It's not Hold On.
It feels, but similar to Hold On. It's a little long, perhaps, but it's fun. It's a shanty, you know. I know you feel a bit more strongly about this than me, and it kind of lacks a certain melodic rigor. I think it's more of a story song than a song. But no doubt this would have been wild on stage. This is, according to Tom Waits' Library, it's just an extra song added to Scene 7. We don't really get any kind of word on what it is, but and they actually Reaper Barn, as they say in Tom Waits' Library as well, is Germany's favourite red light zone, which is located at the St. Pauli district in Hamburg. It's notorious for its sex-related entertainment. It's a stone's throw as well from Harry's Harbour Bazaar, which we mentioned earlier, and they've got a few pictures of Reaper Barn actually, and it looks a bit like Vegas. I thought it was going to be a lot more kind of disreputable than that, but it's got loads of neon and kind of, you know, big signs and stuff like that. But it's not a bad song, but it's just a tad too typical, perhaps, in an album that isn't. Look,
I think some of your reservations for this song might be answered in the Alice demo version, which is a bit more lively. But yeah, let's get on to what I call the last of the songs that I actually listened to on this album. This is going to be quite.
There's 3 classics left.
Okay. Look, this is the sister piece. This is I'm Still Here. It's only 1 minute 49. It's another short song. It's the sister piece to No One Knows I'm Gone.
Yeah,
it's a little bit of a saccharine stocking filler. But to me, it's almost like Johnsburg, Illinois, in the sense that it's Waits getting as much heartfelt love into one paragraph as possible.
Yeah, I can never call this stocking filler. I think this is a masterpiece of brevity. This is a wonderful, wonderful song, isn't it? Kind of You Dream Me Up and Left Me Here. Like Carol Dodgson on his own, kind of looking back on this world. The lyrics are very simple, and I love how it rises at the end, and then that just ends. There isn't like a second verse or whatever. It just kind of comes in and comes back out. And Waits was again speaking to Auntie for the press kit, and he said, talking of Alice in general, but the song as well. He says, "Quote: The story is, I guess it was Oxford University at a celebration, and they wanted Alice, the Alice of Alice in Wonderland. They wanted her to come and speak in front of the class because by then she was in her 80s. So she came all the way from wherever she came from. By the way, this is, I should say, the film I mentioned earlier, Dreamland. This is what it's about. That's literally the story. It's mostly about old Alice looking back on her life." Again, brilliant movie. Because by then she was in her 80s. She came all the way from wherever she was, and it was a long journey. And she got up on stage, and she walked up to the microphone and banged on the microphone and said a few words for the class. And this was kind of a hypothetical song that we created to cover a situation like that you might imagine one would be singing or thinking about. It's just kind of an odd situation to imagine of a little girl who's like 9 years old, and then to see her as a grown woman walking out. And I did a little bit more research as well. And Alice Liddell Hargreaves, as she was known then, was invited in 1932 to visit the US to receive an honorary degree from Columbia University in New York. The visit aroused intense press interest, which continued after a return to England. And it says the event was a central theme for the excellent movie Dream Child of 1985. But it's beautiful as well, and like the way the song swaps and switches, so it kind of has this beautiful chords, isn't it? Beautiful playing at the start, just so full of feeling, just drenched in emotion. And I love how it kind of turns on its own. It goes, "Someone turn the lights back off." So the idea that the lights have been turned on this song, and it kind of throws you off kilter. It's effortless.
Yeah, It is like I say, it is gorgeous in its brevity, and again, like Johnsburg, Illinois, the title of the song is the last line. There's a weird music video for this. That's a fan one. I stumbled upon it doing the article, the top 11 Tom Waits music videos, and it was actually quite fun. It was like a kind of clearly like a student production, but the whole video was just a girl with her eyes closed. And then, like, when Tom Waits says, "I'm still here," she opens her eyes. I was like, "Oh, it's kind of cute. That's something Waits might appreciate." It's a bit off kilter, but again, these shorter tracks, the music's very much within the world of Alice. We could just describe how we've got the flourishes and the subtle cello and sort of mournful clarinet, that kind of thing. It is just within the world of Alice. It does fit perfectly. I couldn't imagine anyone whacking this one onto a playlist with Telephone Call from Istanbul and Filipino Box Spring Hog. But yeah, in terms of Alice, very much like something like Lucky Day, it exists for the play, and it does that very well.
Yeah, it's incredible. And now the next song. Look, you don't. It's okay. It's okay. I've got over the fact that you don't really like The Piano Has Been Drinking, Not Me, and begrudgingly, I've accepted the fact that you're not a fan of Anywhere I Lay My Head. But to not enjoy this song is a whole different kettle of fish and bird, because this is just ridiculous. Like, this song's Fish and Bird. This is one of my all-time favourite Waits tracks. This is the only Waits song that makes me cry, and it still makes me cry. I don't know what it is. It doesn't always make me cry, but I remember coming into Oxford like 2 weeks ago, when we had just seen LCKD, a friend of ours in Birmingham, and I was coming back, and I was like hungover, and I was listening to Alice, obviously making loads of notes for the podcast, and this song came on, and just that opening stanza, they brought around for the sailor and they heard his tale of a world that was so far away, and a song that we've never... Oh, Waits' delivery is incredible on this track. I just... on the Twitter, at TomWaitsPodcast, by the way, of course, if you want to get in contact with us as well, TomWaitsPodcast@gmail.com. That would be great. Hear any of your opinions on Alice. What do you think about this? Have we perhaps dwelled too much on Alice and Dodgson? Probably. Please let us know. Maybe not enough. I don't know. It depends on your predilections. But I put a question on there saying, what is the saddest Tom Waits song? And again and again and again, Fish and Bird came up. People kept saying Fish and Bird. People just can't get over this song, and it is heartbreaking. I mean, if you want to take it on the metaphorical sense, yes, it is about the impossible love between Dodgson and Carol, and kind of, the Fish and Bird, these two diametrically opposite things. I mean, it's not necessarily that Carol is a whale, it's more that Liddell is a bird, and one exists in the water, one exists in the sky. We kind of touched on these themes earlier with Flower's Grave and the idea of, Alice being water and stuff like that, but I just think it's absolutely beautiful. I think the second this song begins, it's just, I've got to give plaudits to the entire band here. A glorious tapestry of melody that they carve out. You have Matt Brubeck on the cello, Ara Artisan returning again from the early song Alice, from the opening track on trumpet and baritone horn, Dawn Harms on the Stroh violin, again from Paul Edward, and they just carve this beautiful, beautiful world. And, the idea that I see this song more as being away from Alice, or at least it helps my enjoyment of the song if I just think about it as being about a fish and a bird rather than about Dodgson and Alice and stuff like that. And just it's ludicrous, right? It's ridiculous that a fish and a bird would fall in love and have a relationship. On so many levels, it's silly. You don't need. But the lyrics are just. They're impossibly sad for me, and the knowledge that he said you cannot live in the ocean, and she said you can never live in the sky. The idea of keeping each other in your heart, and I'll always pretend that you're mine, though I know that we must part. You can live in my heart, and I just think Waits is the master really of these of brevity and these statements that really hit you hard. And this song for me is just a pummeling. I break down when I listen to this song. I just think it's so wonderful.
Right, let's get my facts on the table. Like lyrically, on face value, plain and simple, these are some of the most tear-jerkery words Tom has put to paper.
Yep.
Like, he is fully unrestrained, and I am glad to see that. As rare as they are on his discography, these very unabashedly romantic songs do hit harder when they are rare. You know, he could do 20 of these, but it is just too conventional. I do love the sea becoming the mirror, and that's how they're sort of symbolically together. But with, again, like with Anywhere I Lay My Head, I just kind of feel that, and you've spoken about this throughout this podcast, that a lot of these songs do have this real cohesion. And I feel now that I'm getting a bit wary and weary of just a bass, cello, clarinet, and trumpet, and a bit of pump organ. Like, I would have liked just something else to kind of shake it up a bit. And he's kind of, Tom knows the balance between light and dark on these albums very, very well. And I just feel like he's kind of missed a step here. Just to give 4 nice soft tracks to end the album with might be a little bit too much for me. And I would have liked maybe, like, for example, Jabberwock doesn't appear on the album at all, and maybe chucking that in here may have stirred it up a little bit. And lyrically I love it, but musically it just loses it a bit for me, and I wanted a bit more variety. And like, I know that guitar to Tom was overused, but that doesn't mean he should underuse it to like counteract that. And with a slower track like this, I feel like 4 minutes it does kind of outstay its welcome a little, especially since the sound doesn't change a lot, and it doesn't stand out particularly from any of the songs on the album, especially the other 4-minute track that we're going to get onto, Barracoal. And I just feel like it's not diverse enough, and we're retreading a lot of the same ground, really. But
his singing is tremendous as well. He seems to just empower himself with such urgency.
Let's move on to Barracoal. This is sung by the White Sheep and Alice from the Knee, scene 10. Alice and the sheep sail away, singing as they go, and as they sail, a wall appears with a large egg sitting on it. So again, Tom's thematically creating this album not out of the order of the play, but how it should be listened to as a whole. Barracoal is named after the style of singing of Venetian gondoliers. Apparently. So you can imagine Tom's taken Kathleen to Venice.
Oh, definitely.
And someone was singing, and he goes, "What's that you doing?" And then he'd be like, "Barracoal." But yeah,
oh my god,
Barracoal. one of the nicest. This song is filled with very idyllic imagery of romance, and again, it has that same potential for a darker edge at its heart. Like lines like, "We are alone in the house, your eyes fall down upon me, and I belong only to you." Like, again, great line if you're singing to someone his age, but again, she's this 11-year-old girl. But what I do like is how the album does bookend itself lyrically. The ice skates spell Alice, and then the branches spell Alice, which is literally the very last line of the whole thing.
And that feels like a break from the song, doesn't it? When he starts to sing that, it's like new chord progression outside of it. There's a nice kind of swoon to this song, isn't there? Do 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 da da do.
It's a bit croony.
Yeah, I don't mind this song. Like if I'm going to be slightly kind of what's the word here? I'm gonna read into it a little bit too much. Like, it was interesting because obviously this song, I'd never heard the word Barracoal before, and
Barracoal,
like you say, it was a gondolier sort of thing, and it does have that kind of meandering across the kind of Venetian waters, kind of and we talk about she's skating on the ice in a glass in the hands of a man that she kissed on a train. And all the children have gone into town to get candy, and we are alone in the house here, and your eyes fall down on me. It is, again, similar to Watch Her Disappear. Is this a fantasy? Is this, you know what I mean? Obviously, it is a fantasy, but it's kind of like, is this a dream world? It feels a bit more concrete. And certainly it's a longer song as well. It doesn't have that spoken word element. The fact that it's sung with all the gorgeous instrumentation behind it kind of gives it a bit more of a kind of, truthful element to it. And there's great lyrics, great ideas. In the wine of my heart, there's a stone in a well made of bone. It's just like, good God, that's like 3 great images on top of each other that all compound to make one amazing image. Like, Waits and Brennan have never lost their acuity for beautiful, beautiful writing. But yeah, this maybe isn't the most memorable song, but it's definitely not bad. I think I need to listen to this song a bit more to appreciate it, but I like it. I like it a lot. And mention of crows, inevitably, and grass. Grass is mentioned quite a lot in Alice as well.
We also have branches bending down as well, which makes me wonder if one of the songs off Orphans was written around this time as well.
I believe that's a cover.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I think it's a cover. Because I was reading about Orphans recently, just kind of checking what songs are what, and it's about Orphans is obviously like 60 tracks, and I think it's like half and half. It's like half of them are like pre-recorded, half of them were new, and I think that was a song that he did for a children's album. I think where it was kind of like they were kind of readdressing that balance or whatever. But yeah, it's great song.
Man looks something up on computer.
Yes, there we go. So Bend Down the Branches. Previously released on For the Kids from 2002, an album featuring renditions of children's songs by various artists. Also on For the Kids, Bare Naked Ladies, Billy Bragg, Darius Rucker. Oh man, Darius Rucker. And Tom Waits, of course. Tom Waits closes
these
it out.
These kids don't know they're born. What a great album.
Yeah, it sounds like a great album.
But yeah, it's 4 minutes long. And yet it's another song where Tom's doing the whole love song, but shock horror. It's a little girl again, and it kind of wears on me a little bit too much. It's not bad, but I'm never going to seek out Barra Corley.
I can disengage my brain with Alice though sometimes. You know what I mean? You can kind of you can pull a little bit of the context out to make it feel a bit better, because otherwise it is.
You have to.
Yeah, you have to.
It does have another one of the great sinister interludes as well. Like he almost plays like bum notes, like purposely just to create this really discordant feel. Like, and he smacks the keys and the weary sax, creates this like disturbing little interlude again. But it's like, yep, Tom, you've done that like 3 times on this album now, four times including this one. So yeah, let's just skip right onto Fawn. This is another little short one. Tom, he knows very well that he's put the audience through its paces here. So again, many times before, he's going to end on a little softer note that's going to allow us to look back over what we've just been through. We've been through Wonderland, and it creates a kind of wholesome little self-reflective moment to kind of end on. In the play, this is Alice comes across a fawn, and as the play describes, they sing wordlessly to each other as a sort of dance and inspect each other. And when the fawn finally realises that Alice is in fact a little girl, she realises that therefore she is a human, and just runs away immediately.
Interesting.
Fawns are innocent and defenceless little creatures, so for this thing to remind Alice of her own innocent form and roots is kind of fitting, but it's also not too much of a stretch to imagine the real Alice Liddell as this defenceless little fawn to fall prey to the predatory Dodgson, a ravenous wolf kind of figure.
Totally. Yeah, a fawn. I'm just looking at the dictionary definition now. I mean, in terms of its categoric definition, is a young deer in its first year. So very, very young, not even kind of childlike, like almost pre-child, kind of like in that infantile area. And yeah, this is a gentle yet oddly searing instrumental. It's quite fragile, but it's quite powerful as well. You have Gino Robert on the marimba that really fleshes this song out, gives it a certain drifting, timeless quality. A song you could definitely imagine being just kind of the ambient noise of Wonderland, or an epitaph for the Golden Afternoon, which obviously features in the books as well. I really like Fawn. I almost see it as kind of like a national anthem as well of Wonderland. You know what I mean? Like really. And for me, Waits, as we've explored throughout his career, ever since 1973's closing time, and now look at almost 30 years later in Alice. Obviously, it's been sort of written years before, but kind of released or whatever. But he loves wordplay, as we say, fall through the ice of Alice, and Carol loved wordplay as well. And for me, I see fawn as a pun. Not only a young deer, but fawning over someone. And which is obviously what Carol does. And I've just again got the dictionary definition here. Fawn, to give a servile display of exaggerated flattery or affection, typically in order to gain favour, or to slavish devotion to, like a dog. The dog started fawning on me. So, I mean, I don't know if that's on purpose or not. Maybe not, because the fawn's in the play. But, it's nice to think about. And it definitely works within the context of Carol. And we end on those high notes. And then we kind of just, obviously, Alice in Wonderland is kind of famous. I don't know if it invented the idea of kind of waking up and it was all a dream. But, definitely popularised it. And it does add to that sense of just kind of like re-emergence and,
Yeah, it's funny you should mention that, because that's going to come up in our Real Gone segment shortly. Yeah, this is a relatively mellow and aromatic tune, but I would put it in the top 10 sort of Tom Waits songs no one ever puts on an active playlist. And this is the part where now we're going to have 15 emails from people all around the world saying, oh no, Fawn's an underrated gem and their favourite track.
I put Fawn on my instrumental blog post on TomWaits podcast at WordPress.com. I really like Fawn. I think Fawn's beautiful.
Did you put all of his songs on that, or was it just like a top 10?
No, it's just top 10. Yeah, I missed out quite a few actually. But I remember regrettingly missing out Rainbirds, which I love.
Yes.
Which closes out
Swordfish.
So yeah, Swordfish. Yeah.
So that was Alice.
That was Alice.
Ooh, heavy.
Yeah, incredible.
Drenched in darkness.
I mean, still definitely one of my very favourites. I just think as a piece of work, it's one of his very, very best. But love to hear what you would think as well. So again, TomWaitsPodcast at gmail.com. And as ever, Sam, we do our tops and our bottoms. So we'll start, least favourite. We'll start negative. We'll go positive. What's your least favourite song on Alice?
See, this is hard because I know I'm going to annoy someone a lot with whatever I pick.
The suggestion that there's a bad song in Alice, jeez.
I'm not going to pick Fish and Bird because that'll break your heart. So I'm probably going to pick, just so I can say it again, Baracole. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Not to oversimplify, but I'm just a little bit meh about it, which is a word I know you hate. What's your least favourite song, Tom?
It is Reaper Barn. I know it's a dick move because I know it's one of your favourites. But like, if I'm putting Reaper Barn against any of the other any of the other 14 songs of this album, it doesn't win out. Unfortunately, I think every other song on this album is better than Reaper Barn. It gives me more joy, even Baracole. So favourite song, Sam. This is hard. This is one of the harder choices, definitely.
Do I just pick Reaper Barn because it is one of my favourites, and just to spite you?
Shut up about Reaper Barn.
Yeah, I think I'm going to pick Reaper Barn. It's the one that I like.
You like Reaper Barn more than Tabletop Joe?
Yeah.
Wow.
Definitely. Okay. And it's just it's so endlessly singable. Like I just love I love his delivery, and I love just the sheer craftsmanship of the song, and it reeks of Brennan in the best way. I definitely have to pick Reaper Barn. That is the first time we've ever had a proper contrast there. I think.
Yeah, there's probably been some more in the annals of...
No, but I mean, as in best and worst song. I don't think there's anything...
That is interesting. Yeah, your best is my worst, yeah. That says a lot. I'll go with Fish and Bird for obvious reasons. I think it's a great song. I want to just say as well, as we've finished Alice, I believe that brings us to like 230 songs that we've reviewed now. So, ridiculous amount. And, we're getting there. But, of course... best and worst tradition, and another tradition is Real Gone, which is REEL, if you weren't aware of that genius fawn-like pun there. But basically, this is where Sam, we review Tom Waits's. Oh, I should say, by the way, big Tom Waits kind of movie TV news that just dropped the other week. Yeah. Basically, Tom is slated to star in Citizen, which is a Hulu only sort of, Hulu exclusive TV show, which is pretty fucking cool, to be honest, that he's going to be on a TV show and a cast member, and he's playing like some guerrilla priest, I believe. We don't really know much yet. It's just been announced, but... And
that's guerrilla as in guerrilla soldier, not as in...
Yeah.
Not in a giant
that would be better. That would be way better, yeah. But... I mean, obviously, I was saying to Sam before, when the show comes out, there's no way we're not going to watch it, and we'll come back and review the show. Like, I think that would be quite fun to do as a bonus episode or whatever. But yeah, so this kind of dates the episode. But if you listen to this in the far future, this week we learnt that Citizen was coming out with Tom Waits. But Sam, what is the film that we're talking about today?
Today's film is called Wristcutters: A Love Story.
I must have dozed off. I think I slept on my ear wrong. Do I look asymmetrical to you at all? Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm Rafe Neller. Don't call me Rafe. My mom used to call me Rafe, and don't get me started. Just call me Neller. I lost my dog, and I'm just sick about it. You haven't seen a dog. His name's Freddie.
I thought you'd look for him while laying in the middle of the road.
Well, I had to take a break. I mean, it's emotional work.
In the middle of the fucking road? Don't you think that's a bit irresponsible?
Hey, look, it's too late, really, to continue looking for Freddie. Why don't we go to my place?
basically there was a real sort of mix-up as to what we were going to be doing. Were we doing Domino? Were we doing the Book of Eli? And we're kind of saying the worst to last, really. So
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, Tom, just pick something out of that, because we went to the pub about a year ago and just wrote every single film he's ever done, and just pick one out of a hat, Tom. And this is a film. It's a little indie project directed by Goran Dukić, and it's very hard to explain without giving too much away, but essentially it's a road trip movie set within a world very much like our own, except instead of the living, it is inhabited solely by those who have committed suicide. And as the characters point out, everything's kind of the same except slightly shitter. There are no stars, the colours are all muted and faded, and literally no one can physically smile. It's a really interesting little world. And we follow our main character Zia as he finds out the girl who he himself had committed suicide over has also apparently turned up in this world. So he sets off to find her, and on the way he collects a ragtag group of misfits, as is the standard format for any indie movie, including a charming if somewhat cantankerous Russian who lives with his whole family, as suicide ran in his genes. Like he's the only guy who's kind of happy because he has his whole family, and a girl who claims that she doesn't belong in this world as she didn't intentionally commit suicide. She just accidentally overdosed. And like she's constantly looking for the people in charge, kind of like angels who kind of run this. It's just an obvious metaphor for that sort of limbo between heaven and hell. But overall, the whole affair is pretty fun and kooky. It made me chuckle more than enough times and kept me interested in this very oddball world that how like in some films you get annoyed that they don't explain the rules of what's going on, like cough Batman versus Superman, but it feels very personal, despite the fact that it is an adaptation of a short novella. And one of the best things is we have this surreal cutaway imagery where we see, whenever we meet a character, we have a flashback to see how that character committed suicide. Yeah, and you've got early performances from like Will Arnett and a bunch of other indie actors. But it's funny that we had to watch this one because it does link perfectly with Alice in Wonderland. We have excessive dream sequences that blur the lines of reality and fiction. We have a rabbit hole-esque portal that the character falls through with symbolic objects, including a clock, passing them as they plummet. And again, without giving anything away, if you know the ending to Alice in Wonderland, which is totally not a first grade / year one writing cop-out that anyone can do, if you know that ending, you know the ending to this film without giving too much away. But I think you just guessed it, didn't you? But yeah, Tom Waits himself plays Nella, not Hella from Mystery Men, and he's the leader of a sort of a rogue campsite out in the desert where insignificant miracles tend to occur, and honestly, he's a joy to watch in the few scenes that he has here. Although he is in it more than even I thought it would be.
Is he very Waitsy?
Oh my God, he's very Waitsy. He's impossible not to typecast in one way or another.
Yeah.
Possibly his most typecast role is either in Mystery Men or Seven Psychopaths, which is actually a good one that we haven't got to yet. I've just realised that.
That's true.
But he has some great one-liners, and you can tell that he's always got something up his sleeve, or he's hiding something from the audience. But importantly, he's really kind and soft-hearted in this film, which is like a nice change of pace. Like he takes his time with certain character moments, and you really warm to him, though he still is, weirdly Waitsian. And he even does the entirety of the Crooked Tree parable. And I wonder if this is the first time he ever performed it. Like there was a crooked tree and a straight tree, and it's a great parable. And I don't even know how it relates to the story, but Tom makes it work. Tom also appears on the soundtrack, with Dead and Lovely being the song swan of the main character Zia as he, uponsively cuts his wrists. Dead and lovely, and you see the blood like going along the tiles and stuff. It's really good. Overall I liked it. It was a little bit too indie for me, and every road trip movie does this. It has a sluggish second act in the middle where just scenes happen along the way, very much like Alice in Wonderland. Things just happen. Alice finds out about Wonderland in the first act. Oh, okay, what is this place? In the third act of Alice in Wonderland, she has to overcome Wonderland and defeat it and escape. But the middle is just things happening, and whereas in Alice in Wonderland the things happening are aware of their sort of nonsensicality, in this it's a little bit sluggish, but it was competently shot. You had a great cast who all act the very maudlin tone very well, and look, if you're after an offbeat charm and a different kind of escapism, this is the indie flick for you. and then the director just hasn't done anything else since, and it's a real shame, really, because he worked really well with Tom Waits. Tom Waits is brilliant in this movie.
All right.
So my arbitrary number is 7.134 out of 10.
Fair enough. I mean, better than Cold Feet then.
Look, I actually want to go back and watch Cold Feet, but
No, you
know
don't.
you know how people do edits of movies now.
Yeah.
Like there's the fantastic. It's called there's the Bilbo edition and the Tolkien edition of the 3 Hobbit films, and the Bilbo one's slightly better, as it is literally just all the scenes with Bilbo put together, and it creates a narrative. It even gets, that really shitty bit where Smaug the dragon gets covered in gold, and like he has to fly out. They actually use CGI and make him red in that scene, and they take out the whole gold bit. And it's a really good edit. But I'd like to see an edit of Cold Feet of just Tom Waits' scenes, because no matter what you think about that piece of shit Bill Pullman's bore fest, Tom Waits is great in it. Kenny's mad now. It's so big time. He is just playing Frank, but it's Kenny instead.
It is. Check out our. I forget what episode we reviewed Cold Feet on, but yeah, check out Cold Feet. Film that stars Tom for he's like a main character, and it's not very good, but obviously Tom is still very good.
Come on, yeah.
All right,
we are literally just under 2.5 hours now. So let's wrap this up. Come on, let's go.
Yeah. So. Thank you so much for listening as well, and we'll be back obviously with Blood Money in 2 weeks. You can get in contact with us, TomWaitsPodcast at WordPress, TomWaitsPodcast@gmail.com. We've got the blog as well, YouTube, all that good stuff at TomWaitsPodcast. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you soon. Keep listening to Waits.
Hopefully we'll see you sooner with VH1 Storytellers next week.
Yes, that's a good point as well. So if you aren't aware, we do bonus episodes as well on YouTube where we just kind of do our favourites for eras and sort of, special little things. And our next one is going to be, a hagiography of the incredible VH1 Storytellers performance that Waits gave, kind of around this era, a little bit later on now, but, this kind of era.
We're going to gush, we are.
We are going to gush. There's gushing. But yeah, anyway, guys, we will see you next time. Thanks, guys.
Now, I notice you have... A lot of times when people have this much music, they'll have like a double CD or something.
All right.
But you have released 2 separate CDs.
They're separate, yeah.
And what is the strategy behind that?
Well, now, if it was a good idea, I guess I'll take credit for it. And if it turns out not to be a good idea, I guess I'll blame it on somebody else.
Well, that's good. That's the American way.
Isn't it? Yeah.
But I wonder, will there be a possibility, people will say, oh, I'll take this Tom Waits album and not that Tom Waits album, and one might do better than the other, whereas if they were together, everybody wins.
I think you should get both myself.
Oh, you think you should get both?
I think you should.
Is there a different musical theme to each one?
Both are completely unique and different from each other. But we had a lot of dough, and we figured we'd make.
Why not?